just to ground us in why we're here. You've seen this slide before, but we as a department spoke about what is the mission and the vision of ACES. I'm not going to read this, but we want to try to connect today with one another and to learn from each other. This next slide goes into a little bit more of the why. Dr. Smith usually talks about this at the end a little bit, but there is a connection for the student outcome focused governance that Dr. Herring gets these questions every month. I think this is the 7th iteration where the board asks her questions, and she has to give a now, next, and need as she is talking about our different goals for SOF-G. The ACES process hasn't changed. We have had 95 or 97% of our principals have completed that survey. You'll get a survey at the end. We are trying to get better at this with the feedback that you give us. Changes. We're not going to have that presentation of that first slide like we have in the past. The Q&A will start right after you talk about the glows and grows. And I think that a couple things that we learned from yesterday, just a reminder, is that I know it's easy just to start talking about the slides, which you can, but we will, the panel will have questions for you right away. Comparative data points, we focus on this year's data points. And then for high schools, remember that one of the reasons we split, and I think that really worked, because in the past we had 14 or 15 principals, and so we had 7 yesterday and 8, so it's a shorter time. Hopefully you can get back into your building, but it's going to be 20 minutes because we have more data to discuss than elementary or middle. Expectations and norms. I always like to just to popcorn out a few that you are looking at these and thinking like, this is where I want to ground us today. Just if I could get 3 volunteers on what speaks to you in any of these bullet points. Thank you, Dr. Bachman.
Sessions are learning-oriented and action-focused.
Thank you. I feel like that was a group effort right there. One more.
Honest and open communication.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. This is the only data point. This is a qualitative, no quantitative, but I just wanted to show everyone this is what happened in the fall. Here are the 5 themes for the Q&A. Attendance strategies. I'm reading these because it's kind of small. Attendance strategies, intervention and credit recovery, graduation ready, supporting student behavior, and family engagement. The top need themes for high schools, this is high schools in the fall, CLL support, hiring, staffing, student behavior, professional development, and additional funding. So we'll see what happens today. This is for the panel. I did talk to the principals that we had some questions yesterday around the last 2 slides in the appendices on the EOC and on MAP, and so that I want to make sure that they are prepared. I didn't move those slides just because they had printed those off, but they know that questions may be asked. Reminders, 3 minutes per slide for questions and conversation, 2 minutes at end to address needs, and then a 1-minute transition. Survey at the end. And so first up, I just want to look at Forestella Taylor. You are not first up, right? Because you did talk about that last time. And so this time will be first up, Dr. Ford from South Atlanta High School. Thank you, Dr. Ford, for being first.
So they heard you, Forestella, so you guys do listen. Okay, all right. Good morning. South Atlanta is a STEM, that's our signature program, but now it's STEAM, whereas we're incorporating the arts in our STEM program. A globe for our STEM program is CER, Claims, Evidence, and Reasoning, where we've been seeing CER and science for years, where we look at claiming it, providing evidence and reasoning. So now we're doing PL for our ELA classes as we prepare our students for the milestone around analyzing and argumentative writing. Math is also an area of, we are seeing professional learning happening there. It's a glow for us, but it's also a grow as we begin to focus on looking at CER, implementing it in our math classes as well for this upcoming school year as our students get ready for the milestones. A grow is when you walk into South Atlanta, STEM does not permeate throughout the building, where it should be pervasive, where you're seeing things created and come alive through technology. That's not happening, where students are able to talk about STEM. Maybe there's just pockets of students talking about STEM, what STEM looks like, but we want it permeated throughout the building and every student talking about STEM in every class and the connection throughout. I have one science vacancy. A teacher left to go to the West Coast in January, and we were able to hire a retired teacher, and she started on Monday. So we were able to fill that position.
Good morning, Dr. Ford.
Good morning.
So I know that you also do 3DE, yes?
Yes.
So that connection between STEAM and 3DE, what does that look like?
It's a work in progress. We see it mainly in our ELA classes where we bring in business partners. And so Home Depot, so when we find companies looking at the companies that we bring in to do coaching, we look at the standards and the alignment there. So in terms of helping us create PBLs, when in math classes, when we can't find a problem-based learning objective, then we begin to look at the project and work intentionally with those students and with those coaches that when they come into the classroom to really be intentional. So just really being intentional with getting, when we have an opportunity to bring in the coaches from companies, selecting those coaches that align to our signature program.
All right, let's take a look at that. We'll look at your attendance and behavior data. So kudos on the ATR. We're seeing that improvements there by about 3%. And then obviously we've got some challenges with our students not chronically absent. So I want to get into some of that challenge and the strategies, but also recognize that, you know, when we're looking year over year, there's improvement, right? So let's name that it is a work in progress and that we are seeing growth. So what have you seen that's working, and also the urgency to address the large number of students not chronically absent?
So celebrating those kids who are coming to school, being intentional, incentivizing students who are not coming to school. So what's important to students is we have to really just hit them where it's important. So for our juniors and seniors, it's prom that's coming up now. So meeting with them yesterday, talking about putting them on an attendance contract and missing X amount of days, and if you do, then prom would not be an option for you. We need you to come to school. And so that has worked in the past for us, getting students there. We see the correlation of attendance and academics, right? We know that if those students are hitting us for attendance, they'll hit us for academics and probably behavior as well. So if we get them to school, we can teach them. And so even though it's just I guess a carrot you dangle over their head, but prom is important, so they'll come to school. So we're going to put them on contracts, seniors and juniors, get them there and use that as a dangler.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Do you do any of that work happen in the fall? Like, is there a homecoming dance? Have you ever done anything like the same type of contract in the fall with any events? Just thinking about looking ahead of the same, if it works, how might we catch some of those students before they get chronically absent?
For some reason, students don't come to dances. Like, they don't do the homecoming dances, right? So, but I do agree that we need to find something to dangle over their heads to get them into school. And so we'll take that and look at that. Right. Mm-hmm.
So Patricia, good morning. So, is this the work of your attendance committee that's working on the incentives, and are you all meeting every week? And related to the students who are absent, we'll look at your course failures. Are those juniors and seniors the students who are having to participate in credit recovery?
For the most part, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so it is the work of the attendance team, but it's everyone's work. It's my work. right? And so knowing that, hey, I have not seen Tommy in a few days, like, Tommy, where are you? What's going on? How can I help you get here? Talking to parents. And so it's not just the care team, it just becomes everyone's work. And when I say that, my leadership team, and we have caseloads. And so there's so many students, and so the hot list, and so if I have 20 students on the hot list, that's just too many to manage. So I'm making them smaller by including more people to do the heavy lift around attendance, behavior, and academics.
Just really quickly, so as you look at your CCRPI attendance, where do you all sit now? Related to your target for this year? I don't know if we know that, Matt.
I don't know that.
Okay, we'll get back to you. Thank you.
Okay.
One other question here on this page before we leave. So with our young men and the suspension rate, any specific strategies that you can speak to that are working with your young men to support that suspension rate?
So let me just lift the positive. So we see an uptick in suspension, but I must say I have over 800 students who have never been suspended. So what happens to those kids who are wreaking havoc in my building? And mostly the young men, mostly special ed students. This keeps me up at night. And so when we begin to look at what we can do is partnering with outside organizations. And so Fulton County has started a program, I think it's at Bunch Middle School. It's the Juvenile Initiative, Intervention Initiative. They're going to partner with us, so we've identified 15 students on our hot list, mainly 9th and 10th graders. They will come in next week, facilitate a 12-week program for our students, and then bring them on next year. So offering more mentorship program in our building to be intentional to work with our, not just young men, but we're seeing an increase in our young ladies for discipline as well. And most of it stemmed from the community. And so social media. And so they see the posting over the weekend, they make plans to fight when they get to school on Monday. So what can we do to curtail that? So the students will be off a week next week. And so things will happen in the community. So how do we get ahead of it? So they'll walk into the building on Monday, the 27th, and we will have community circles. And each of us in my leadership team have identified students who are on the hot list who we know are caught up in chaos in the community, and we will do community circles. Hey, how was your weekend? It's good to see you. What took place? What can we help you with today? So we can just get ahead of that to perhaps mitigate the issues that we're having with our young men and some of our young ladies as well.
Some practices are student-facing, but then also some actions that are adult staff-facing. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with the staff, in addition to how you're trying to support your students?
Yes, thank you for lifting that, Mr. Usher. So this has been a hard year. So when I reflect on why is it so hard this year, why is it so challenging this year, we're midway through COVID, but we're really not. Our kids are traumatized, mental wellness is important. So it's not just something that we need to do for our students, but for our teachers as well. And so we're looking at Friday, before we go for spring break, before we send the students and the teachers away, is doing an SEL symposium around mental wellness, not just for the students, but for the teachers as well. So we're tapping people to come in and provide things around conflict resolution, things that really plague our community, getting a lot of people to be there full day. And when teachers have planning, we want to do yoga for the teachers, meditation, and have them go through sessions around self-awareness and some SEL activities to send them on their way for their vacation.
Can you just talk about the monitoring system that you all have in place to make sure that you have your eyes on these failure rates and how students are progressing?
So when I looked at the failure rate, it comes in the 10th grade and 9th grade. Our juniors and seniors, the light bulb is going off. And if they're failing in the 11th and 12th grade, many of my seniors and juniors are failing electives. They don't understand and know the importance of elective classes and how they play into their overall GPA. I don't care if you need it or not, it ties into your GPA. And so, so they're failing the elective classes. But my freshman and sophomore, they're failing multiple classes. And what does that look like? And so it's a correlation of those students not coming to school. When we begin to talk about students and their readiness for the milestones, those kids are targeted as not on track because they don't come to school. Like, I never see Tommy, and so I can't really predict if Tommy is going to pass the assessment because we know that Tommy really didn't take the MAP assessment seriously, so we can really look at a predictor to see if he's going to be successful on the test. If the kids are coming to school, we see the data, we see the progression changing and them being on track for graduation and passing classes. And so the kids who don't come, what can we do for those kids? And so that's the work that we're looking at now. What can we put in place? We're looking at doing Saturday school, getting kids to stay after school, and if they can recover, to say, okay, if you come to Saturday school so many days, perhaps we can eliminate an absence for the day. Something to incentivize the kids to come to school and do well academically.
Thank you, Patricia. Can you speak to just the monitoring system, how often you all are looking at the coursework, who's doing that work around the failures as far as monitoring?
Department chairs, coaches, the assistant principals. I'm looking at it. I know that my highest failure rate comes in the 11th grade. We lost a teacher in December, but we hired another teacher, and so we had a high failure rate in 10th grade literature. We had a high failure rate in U.S. history. So those are some areas, and so we put credit recovery in place this semester. And so we're running 3 sessions, 6 weeks at a time. And so those kids who were unsuccessful last semester failed a course, they're recovering it, and now. My juniors understand and know that if you are deficient now, if you do not have 18 credits to become a senior come May, then we're going to send you to Phoenix Academy. So those kids are working aggressively to ensure that they will be a senior in May so they can return to South Atlanta come August.
All right. And to your point there, when we're looking at, I'm looking at our cohort 2024, the 2024, let's see, that would be your juniors. Okay,
Those
so
are
we're looking
juniors.
at our percentage of students that are enrolled in their expected grade level and on track. And I'm going to kind of correlate down to the box below there. So our college and career readiness. So, and you don't have to know this specific number or percentage, but how many students would you estimate are missing? When you look at like cohort 2023, right, we see that 31% are AP, 8% dual enrollment, 83% CTAE, 2% work-based learning. How many students are not falling into one of those categories, ballpark?
For our CTAE, it's about 22 students who are short of being a completer.
Okay.
Many of those students will not be a completer simply because they come to me late. If I get a student as a sophomore, they can become a pathway completer. We're getting kids, juniors, who are coming to us, and so of course, graduation trumps being a pathway completer. So we need to get those kids recover. Some kids, our strategy for next year is when we get a student who is new to South Atlanta and have no CTAE classes, how can we get those kids to go to ACCA? Because we know that they can earn a CTAE pathway in 1 year. So we're trying to push those kids there so we can increase that number for CTAE. Dual enrollment, we're taking trips to colleges so our kids can become dual enrollment. We're partnering with Georgia State with students as freshmen to learn more about college so their interest will be increased so we can improve in dual enrollment at South Atlanta.
Let me ask one other quick follow-up on that. So the work-based learning, talk to us about the interest there. What does that look like? And if you get a student late, is there still an opportunity? Is there opportunity there, or because of the credit requirement? I'm just thinking about the logistics of how we might be able to just talk to the challenge and opportunity, et cetera there.
Yeah, where we are is like a work desert, right? So it's hard for kids to have to catch a bus to go far to take a work-based learning class. And so if my kids work, they're working at McDonald's and they have to work. So they don't have an interest of really being work-based learning, they're just working.
Can you talk about your AP classes? What does that number look like for you right now? And then what is your plan, if you have a plan, for increasing the specific coursework? Have you looked at potential reports? Do you know where your kids show potential for being successful with AP?
Yeah, we did away with AP. I'm all for offering programs that we know improve rigor and offer rigor, right? But it has to be the right teacher. And so also, too, we know that with Superintendent Hearing's scorecard, that a student who takes AP needs to pass both tests to earn us a point, correct? And so I wasn't really getting much bang for my buck. None of my students in AP US history were passing the exam. So I did a reset and took it away this year. I did biology as well. We're a STEM school, but I'm not offering AP biology because our kids are not scoring, and there was no rigor offered in the classroom. So as we begin to hire, we need to hire people that have an interest to take AP classes and can deliver strong instruction in AP history, U.S. history, and also biology. So we just did a reset. But those students who have been targeted to do AP coursework, we're sending those students to dual enrollment. So that was the trade-off. So again, next year as we look at bringing AP U.S. history back, finding the right person, and we hire science to fill that science vacancy, hopefully it'll be someone that will be ready to go to the training this summer.
Are there any ninth grade AP courses, the human geography?
When we looked
Seminar,
at the PSAT scores, the course that was in alignment was the, Kenya's not here, it's the, seminar. So we hired a teacher from another county, he went to the training, and he left in December. So we need to find someone that will take the training in, but that will be the best one for my students based on the data from 8th grade.
And I'll say for the goals when we cascade up to what we're looking at in the board meetings, one of our interim goals is that access at the 9th grade, right? So using that AP High Potential report, looking at the PSAT, finding the right course, having a strategy around the human capital to get them in so that we can increase, because then we'll start to build, right? We'll have those students in 9th grade that can then matriculate through and be successful.
But we do offer AP World History to our 9th graders. And we have 2 sections of those.
Thank you, Patricia. Can you speak to what are the challenges to getting teachers, the teacher that you spoke to about the AP course, what are the challenges with getting your AP teachers trained? What's the barrier?
The will, right? I think you have, first, I can't go to any and everyone and say, hey, would you be willing to go? Could you offer? Would the kids be engaged? So it's just the right person. I think anything is important, and success of it is who stands in front of the students. So me being able to identify, I think Yolanda would be a great teacher for an AP class because she's engaging, and so that's where we are. So as we're looking to hire this summer, hopefully we can find someone that has the will, because we can train them on the skill.
Gotcha. We don't offer stipends to them right now, is that correct?
We don't offer.
Stipends to teach AP now, we don't do that, is that correct?
No.
Okay, thank you.
That's a great idea.
Stipends for training, sorry.
Okay.
So can we skip to slide number 9? We're going to look at your end of course milestones. So as we take a look at Algebra 1, Biology, U.S. History, and American Lit and Composition, and we see the numbers that are beginning learners, can you speak to instructionally? We know that we talked about attendance, and so we know that's correlated to the grades and to some of this. So can you speak to what's happening instructionally in these classrooms and what you all are doing about this data, even though we know it's last year's data for end of course?
I will say that it was a correlation to the map. Like how they performed on the map is how they really performed on the milestone. So taking this data, being intentional. So what we've done is we've done a map, and I think in order for me to show increase and improve my goals is being able to name it, see it, do it, and call students by name. Like I should know how Yolanda's going to fare on any of the milestones if she sits in my class. And so, but the teacher has to know that. The student has to know it. So using the data to really drive instruction, identifying those students by group, looking at the kids who are considered to be bubble kids and how we categorizing them, how we're grouping them, how we're going to move those students. And so in our building this year, we're using the data. Our teachers, we have data meetings where they're bringing exit tickets to the table, how you grouping your students, what does this look like, how can we support you? So we're seeing more station teaching now. Kids are being grouped together. We're seeing teachers team teach. We're pushing in and being really intentional what this looks like. We're counting down the days, the students know where they fare, looking at RIT scores, utilizing that data point to really move instruction.
I appreciate you mentioning using the map for high school. That's great. So can you just go a little bit deeper and talk about, so instruction, who's observing those courses, the teachers that are implementing Algebra 1, Biology, U.S. History, and American Lit and Composition? How often are they being observed and getting feedback from your team around their practices?
So they're getting feedback from the instructional coach for the most part daily, but then we do calibration walks. The way I have my team set up, I have one coach who's over math and science, but then we pull together a team and we do calibration walks and we go and give feedback, and then we sit and we meet with the teachers. The biggest thing is, what can I do to support you to ensure that we're able to move students? Right? Making sure that teachers are bringing data to the table. Like, it's just no excuses. Like, you can't tell me who's going to pass this assessment and we're like 21 days before we sit for the milestones. How are we utilizing the data? And more importantly, teachers being in attendance to teach the students. And so those meetings are important. I sit at those meetings.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Let's move into, with our time, let's move into our needs.
Because of the junior class of 2024, when I just reflect, like, why is that number low? Many of those students are students who participate in our Hornet Academy, and they were successful last year, and those students took 2 years and won, and they passed the core. Well, they didn't have elective classes. So now those students are a deficit in the area of electives. And so we're looking at offering an elective class after school for Twilight, where it's the face-to-face, so that will help them recover an elective. But more importantly, how can we get those students who are class of 2024 to be enrolled at Phoenix in their WINGS program come this summer, so they can be on track to graduate, not in the summer, but May of 2024. That's the first lift. The second is to really help mitigate my suspension is if I were to have a bus to be at my school to transport students who are suspended to go to the At Promise Center would be phenomenal. I tried to partner with outside agency to do that, and that never got off of the ground. So if we could have a school bus that could be there to transport those students, that would be awesome. And lastly, funding to provide transportation for parents. I know if older people have Medicaid or Medicare and they don't have transportation, then the state gives them a Lyft or Uber to where they need to go. I have parents who want to be involved, who want to be at my school, but they don't have transportation. So if we could find some kind of funding to have a card so we can just maybe 2 meetings a year to provide transportation to the school would be great for my school. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Ford, for a great start. I do have a couple reminders, and you just modeled this perfectly, but I did this last time. I forgot. It was after the first, and that is a couple of acronyms. Just a reminder about FERPA, right? We're not going to talk about individual students or a subgroup that's 10 or less. So again, you did it perfectly. So I just want to make sure, because I did this last time, and they're like, did I say something wrong? No, you did not. I just, my team reminded me, and Mr. Hardy does a great job, and he doesn't forget, but I've forgotten this last 2 times. The other acronym is FMLA. Just remember with our adults that we shouldn't be talking about adults on FMLA. So that's just a reminder. Great job. Great start, Dr. Ford. And so our next, I just want to make sure it's up, our next principal, which will be Carver Early College, and it will be Principal Rogers who will be talking about her school.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Christina Rogers, a proud principal of Carver Early College, and we are in the infancy stages of STEM. And so one of the things that we are doing well is having our professional development sessions for our leadership team and our staff overall for the vision casting. We're also having our growth mindset conversations, because this is going to be a shift for the entire school regarding our instructional practices. Now, one of our grows is how we are communicating this shift with our scholars and their parents, because they are a part of this work and they are ultimately impacted. And so that's where we're landing there. I currently have 2 vacancies. One is a math vacancy and the other one is an interrelated position. My interrelated teacher was promoted to CELT. My CELT was promoted to coordinator. My interrelated teacher was promoted within to CELT, and so we are looking to fill her position. Okay.
So good morning.
Good morning.
Can you just speak to, so I know you're in the early stages of STEM.
Yes.
So what is the game plan as we move forward into 23-24?
So I was just talking to one of my mentors about how I am intentional about hiring a STEM coach to make sure that that person is the one who is really embedded and grounded in that work daily. And does that look like full-time? Does it look part-time? And as I look at closing my budget on tomorrow, being intentional to make sure that I have somebody in the building that really understands what the early college model is and how they can infuse STEM in those practices. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to make sure that we are intentional about the STEM learner profiles for the scholars so that they understand what is required of them in this process as they are learners each day, and continuing to have our professional development sessions. So we take the third Tuesday of each month for PD for the staff so that the conversation continues to happen. It doesn't feel like another thing, but they understand this is a part of the practices at early college.
Okay, so let's take a look at your attendance and behavior. So again, looking at around the same time, we're seeing about a 4% bump in attendance, but and then ATR is on point, steady. So what are we seeing with our students not chronically absent? Challenges, how we're addressing that, and anything in particular that's led to the to the slight bump as well.
So in the weekly care team meetings that we have, each of our care team members goes over their caseloads and what particular strategies and communication they have with those scholars who are not meeting the expectations. We make sure that we are incentivizing those scholars when they are meeting their weekly goals. We're also leveraging our advisors to make sure that they're the first line of defense for looking around the room to see who's not there. We're also making sure that we hold teachers accountable for coming to school, because when teachers do not come to school, scholars will not come. They do not want to come for substitutes. And so we are having those conversations in the faculty meetings about teacher attendance and making sure that we are there for our scholars. The other thing that we noticed in our conversations, the one-on-ones that we have with some of our scholars, sometimes they're watching siblings. And so that really has not changed a lot since we came back out of the pandemic. If parents have to work and they have an older sibling in the house, sometimes those siblings will stay home to watch the younger ones. And so we're looking at ways that we can support them with the content, and also having the parents work with the social worker about other services that may be there to support the scholars in getting there.
Christina, can you talk to us about how you're utilizing your restorative practices coach to impact your suspension bill?
So my restorative practices coach is my first go-to person in the building. He keeps a pulse and develops these close relationships, particularly with our girls. That's where we see the highest incidents. We're noticing, even though the suspension rate may say males, we're noticing that there are more potential incidents with the girls because of social media. And so what he does is he provides those restorative circles daily for them, and they have check-ins with him. He does a lot of conflict resolution. My restorative practices coach is also the one who's over our attendance parties, and he incentivizes the scholars for doing the right things. He helps me with uniform processes in the morning. He's almost like the first person they see when they come through the security checkpoint to kind of get a pulse on what's happening, so he can communicate to the admin team what we may need to be prepared for the day. You're welcome.
Okay. Real quick, and so looking at the suspension rate for Hispanic students, I know that end size is on the smaller end, but just speak to any challenges there, or to the higher suspension rate in spring for our Hispanic subgroup.
So that number, I didn't mean to cut you off. It may look higher, and I'll say that because there are fewer students involved in those incidents. So it may look higher there, but it's actually a fewer amount of students that may have been involved in an offense that was more egregious that led to those days.
Got it. And was it something that with the days, are we talking about singular? So we're not seeing a pattern per se? It's
No.
more of an isolated event? Just wanted to
Isolated.
clear. Okay, got it.
Definitely.
So again, just speak to your monitoring system. How are you keeping track of your failure rates? Who has their eyes on this data? How often are they looking at the data? And then what is your plan for addressing?
So we look at this data as an ILT every Friday at 2:30 p.m. I pull up the failure rate. So I used to get up at 2:30 in the morning and get on APS graphs, and I would start shooting off emails to my whole team about it. So I just got myself to a point where I just go Friday at 2:30, we pull it up. And one of the things that we started doing recently is showing this data to the entire school at faculty meetings and having the tough conversations. If you're a ninth grade teacher and you have a failure rate of 75%, but another ninth grade teacher has a failure rate of 4%, what conversations can the two of you have about instructional practices and about building relationship with scholars that can help to curtail some of the failure? Because there are two things happening there. So we're doing data digs now in faculty meetings and putting everybody's data out there so that the entire school can see where we are, so we can be transparent and work together to make sure that number comes down. We're also looking at the relationships that teachers have, that teachers also have with individual scholars that they may not teach, and how they can leverage those relationships to say, hey, you're doing well in my class, you're coming to my class every day, I need you to show up for Mr. Bethune's class every day and do what you're doing for me. I also leverage my athletic director. I have a high number of athletes on my side of the campus, and so as I'm going into classrooms and I'm noticing that athletes should be in American Lit, and I just told you to go to American Lit and I came to your class and you're not there, I'm calling the athletic director to call that scholar because she has their phone numbers. And the scholar's going to show up to class. So it's like everybody has to be in this work with us. Every single person that works at Carver Early College has to be responsible for those rates.
What does credit recovery look like for your scholars?
So we have what we call a mini-master program. So on the 4x4 model, at 9 weeks, they get a permanent transcript grade. So as soon as that transcript grade goes in, we start our mini-mester, which happens after school, 3 days a week, and those scholars are able to recover those credits immediately. Now, sometimes, given their schedule, they may be able to be put back into the course immediately during the day, which we prefer. But in the rare instance that they're not, we have to use our mini-mester program.
Okay, so looking at those college and career readiness indicators, looking at cohort 2023 in particular, kind of that same range of question. Where are we seeing gaps for students, and how are you addressing gaps, making sure that we are finding one of those spots or places for each of our students?
So the most obvious gap is going to be with the CTAE pathway completion. And one of the things that we noticed was that there was an obvious dip there because there's a competition with the scholars who are in that pathway in the gifted internship program this year. So I'm working with the master scheduling team to see if there's another opportunity where those scholars have the opportunity to still complete the gifted internship and the pathway simultaneously. Like, we have some scholars who are right there that we believe can be pathway completers, but there was a conflict, so we're working through that. We're also noticing a slight dip in AP, and again, because of the early college model, we want to truly encourage scholars to be ready to take those courses at one of the 4 partner schools junior year. We are, however, considering, I heard someone mention AP seminar for the freshmen. We're working with, my 9th grade AP is working with somebody over at Midtown High School to talk about the success that they've had with AP seminar and implementing that there, because to Dr. Ford's point, we do want to offer AP courses, but we also want the scholars to succeed. It needs to count at the end. And so you will see an increase, though, in work-based learning. We have some scholars who opted out of the early college model, or some who attempted and then realized that they really need to be working right now. And so that's where you see that, that uptick there. And then we're proud to highlight our increase, again, in dual enrollment, pushing more and more closely to the true early college model. And we attribute that, of course, to the college advisor, whose job it is to make sure that we increase and retain those scholars in the program.
So quick follow-up. Oh, I'm sorry, let me just ask this quick follow-up. So any support that we can offer in that, so with our CTAE, our pathway completers, and the conflict or challenge that's coming into place with gifted, it seems like you said there's a strategy to work it out. Any support you need in that area? Just wanted to call that out.
I would like probably some feedback on maybe independent study opportunities for scholars. If they are not allowed to take the course during the day, is there an opportunity for them to do independent study and still be successful in completing that pathway?
Thank you, Christina. And I know that you all have a very robust dual enrollment over at Early College at Carver, so thank you. Great job. I just want to go back to the AP, and I know that you are interested in trying to offer potentially the AP seminar. Can you talk to, have you had a chance to look at your PSAT data to see what other courses that you might be able to offer even though you are early college? And when you said the fact that you want kids to be successful, absolutely, and we want them to have access as well. What do you think the issue is? Do you think it's teachers, student? Is PSAT helping you at all with any information about what you could offer and the kids potentially be successful in?
When we looked at PSAT scores, we do see a lot of opportunity there, of course, with literacy. And so we currently offer the AP Lang, but we know that happens sophomore year. So in ninth grade year, we're looking at AP Human Geography, which really does not address literacy. However, if those history teachers and ELA teachers are working together, they should be doing a lot of writing and social studies anyway, and that will help improve that.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Can we jump to slide number 9 really quickly? Thank you. And so, Christina, let's talk about your milestones data from last year in the course. So as we look at your American Lit, and primarily let's look at your Algebra 1 and your biology. Can you talk about what you're seeing in classrooms, what your focus is, and how you're supporting this work? And I didn't get a chance to ask Patricia this question, but how are you using the common assessments, which since they are criterion referenced and they align to some of the milestones, how are you using that to help support students and teachers in particularly Algebra 1 and biology?
Okay, and so starting with Algebra 1, we looked at those common assessments and where our scholars fared. And I think we were at 33% the last time we looked. And then we also looked at map data, and we had a serious conversation in December. And my math leader said one of the commonalities we're noticing in the data is that scholars need foundational skills. She said, like, we just had a real authentic conversation. And she said, not everyone is prepared to go into Algebra 1. If they don't have these basic skills, they cannot begin the functions of algebra. So we went in and we looked at those scores and we created a foundations course for those scholars. And we are seeing more success with those scholars who are accessing that now. And then with the biology, we did the same thing. We talked about the biology EOC being a literacy-based test. It's not just about knowing the content, it's about being able to read through the questions and being able to process and synthesize. So instead of putting all of those scholars immediately into biology where they would not be successful, we put some of those scholars based on those scores into environmental science. And so our ELA instructional coach is working with the science leader. And we're working through the specific reading strategies that they are going to implement in the environmental science class so that when they do get ready to go to biology, they'll have some tools with them.
Can I one other follow-up on a separate note? I'm looking at your American Lit and your U.S. History scores, and there seems to be some correlation there as well. Is there some collaboration you can speak to between your ELA and your social science teachers?
So those classes happen also in the 10th grade year. So the 9th grade year is where you're seeing the Algebra 1 and the biology. So that's also the time when scholars are still trying to get their minds wrapped around what the high school experience is going to be like and what the fast-paced rigor of early college program is like. So what happens in the 10th grade year with U.S. History and American Lit, by that time, I'm just speaking like the scholar's mindset, they're ready for school. But for the teachers, the PLCs, when we have whole school PLCs, it really helps. And the second Tuesday of each month, we do grade level team meetings. And in those grade level team meetings, we talk about, once again, attendance. We talk about best practices. And that's how we're getting a lot of bang for our buck there as well.
sorry, when you talked about the foundational pieces for Algebra 1 and biology, I know we talked and are trying to get intervention right for your 4x4 schedule. But we've seen progress. We've seen the usage, especially first semester. So what is that looking like? What's working well? And then what do you still need support with to ensure they're getting those foundational skills?
What is working well is the commitment on the ELA and math teachers to make sure that we have those 2 days per week. The other thing that's working well is pulling those reports every Friday and looking specifically at the teachers who need the help. And we go into those classrooms. We push in the ELA, my AP who's over ELA and we go in and we work with those scholars. What we notice is sometimes, so under our model, you have scholars that may be in Common Lit. Those are the scholars who didn't qualify for the program. Then you have some scholars in the class during that time that are on Read 180, and then you have a handful who are on Systems 44, right? Because they need the most support. That's where we get the most pushback because they don't want other scholars in the room knowing what they're on. So we go in and we work with the teacher, talk about spacing. What does it look like in the classroom so other scholars can't see their computers while they're working? And then I call parents on the weekend and say, hey, can you give me Saturday and Sunday 20 minutes? That's all I need. He's not on. He needs to be on. If you have any problems, this is my Google number. Call me back, and I'll walk you through it. So we own that work.
All right, let's move into our highest priority needs.
Okay, so there are two. I only listed one. But the first one is the continued PD with Tier 1 instructional practices. I think last year and the year before, so many of my teachers got kind of relaxed with this Google Classroom. And so now there is this big need to come back to just some Tier 1 instructional practices. You know, I do, you do, we do, those kinds of things, and checking for understanding. So what we are focused on now after our last PL that we had was looking at Check for Understanding and providing teachers with feedback. So we're gathering that information in the eWalk platform. We're sharing it to the whole school. This is what we see. This is who needs the support. And so we have, I did a walkthrough yesterday with one of my APs in the foundations class, and we had a teacher who was really doing the work. She had 4 groups. She was going to every single group, checking for understanding. Then she had one scholar who was by herself who didn't want to work with the group. The teacher realized the scholar was not understanding the concept. She goes to her closet, gets the manipulative, sits with that scholar, and starts to reteach in a moment. That's what I'm looking for. But everyone's not doing it. And so that's where we would just need more support with that. And the other need would be support with strengthening our true early college model, just making sure that we hold true to that so that scholars do have the opportunity to enter in their junior year as freshmen in college alongside with our STEM program. So I would need that support.
Hey, you want to just give me one layer deeper on that explicitly? What does that mean to hold true?
So what happens is in an early college model, in 9th grade, the first half of the year, they take their core content 9th grade courses. The second half of the year, they take their core content 10th grade courses. And the same thing for 10th grade. So at the end of 10th grade, they will have taken all of their EOCs. So what I need help around is just making sure that we are holding true to that model as we're working through the schedule, just making sure that I can have you also, the district support with that model and making sure that we hold true to it. Okay? Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Principal Rogers. Next, we have a tag team for their encore performance from Therrell High School, Dr. Bethune and Miss Blair.
All right, good morning. I'm Gretchen Blair from Therrell High School, and I'm with my teammate.
Good morning, everybody. Sean Bethune.
All right, we will start. We are an IB school, And we are focused right now, our GLOW is professional development and how to create effective planning units. We are providing a school-wide training on February 20th. So we have blocked off our professional learning day just for IB and to assist our teachers with the planning and implementation, continued implementation of it. Our GROW is that we are going to increase the number of students enrolled in our IB pathway. So for us, it has been beneficial that I am coming from the middle school and we are able to have that vertical alignment where I'm able to reach back and communicate with those individuals at Bunch Middle School to assist us with the planning moving forward with increasing our IB program on the campus. We have several vacancies, 2 hall monitors, 2 PEC paraprofessionals, 1 school secretary, and 1 receptionist currently in our building.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you both for being here this morning. So wanted to see if you could speak a little bit more to that vertical articulation. So I love to hear that you're working with the feeder middle school to increase access and those enrolled in the IB pathway. Just talk a little bit more about what that vertical articulation looks like.
So I was afforded the opportunity to go back to Bunch Middle School after leaving another cluster, and I was the AVID coordinator. And so being that I was the AVID coordinator, I was aligned with the elementary, the middle, and the high school, having an opportunity to work with all grade levels, which opened that window for us to have the communication. So now we have a new IB coordinator at the middle school level. We have our 2 IB coordinators in our building, MYP and our DP coordinator. And so we're having those talks with Ms. Whitfield, the principal, and those coordinators, and sending our individuals to meet each other to plan. So we're planning courses, we're planning classes, we're meeting with those scholars. We're actually going over, we have time set up where we're meeting with the scholars. The parents are coming to our building so that we are communicating effectively and allowing them to come in and see what we have to offer at the Thurl High School instead of going outside of our district or paying for those additional schools. We have everything you need on our campus. There's no need for you to take your scholar anywhere else.
Might I also add this one particular point, is that we really are trying to maintain and keep and develop our IB trained teachers. Back prior to COVID, we had approximately 9 teachers who left, but we retained all of our other staff. So we were impacted post-COVID where we had 17 the year last year, and then we noticed that in order for us to constantly have to replenish the well, so to speak, we want to make sure that we retain and keep those teachers there so that they can be actually trained so that we won't constantly start back over at square one.
What's the focus of the PL on the 20th?
So they're writing lesson plans, and they're planning for the new school year. Can you hear me? Okay, they're writing lesson plans, and they're planning for the 23-24 school year, and so the vertical alignment will continue with the lesson planning from the middle school matriculating to the high school.
Let's move into attendance and behavior. Okay, so first and foremost, kudos on the ATR, and then I'm looking year over year, about a 9% increase in students not chronically absent. So great job holding that down and improving. What's working? What are you seeing that's working with improvement in attendance?
All right, thank you for saying that. The biggest thing in which that what we realize is that in order to actually impact attendance is, one, we all have to be on the collective same page. So we meet weekly, that is the care team as well as the attendance team. So Friday mornings, those times are automatically blocked off and protected. In addition to that, we are guided by these main principles. One is trying to figure out, well, first, get contact with the student, figure out the why, and then also figure out the what's next. And in that, we have found several barriers that had consistent themes. One, whether it's transportation, and oftentimes you find out that the scholars are just saying, hey, I overslept, or if there's a bus issue, we make sure to troubleshoot in order to figure that out. Additional, and I'm sure this is something in which that all principals can say, that there's a culture of truancy in which that students just are very apathetic in terms of just coming to school. So what we do is try to completely incentivize, reach out, make sure that we utilize our SEL lessons in the mornings with our advisories, but also just make sure to realize that, hey, school is the place where you need, and it's a vehicle in order to get you to that next step in life. And so within our data dive that we've done, and in January, we realized that in 9th grade, at least at our school, is that we're almost at 84% in comparison to the high 80% from our upperclassmen. And so what we did, we made sure to do a ninth grade focus on cohort 2026, and that we've identified 72 scholars, and a lot of those out of that, 25 of those 72 were actually repeaters. And so that we made sure to include those homeroom teachers. We've actually had our attendance one-on-one meetings, which is on every Thursday. And we've also made sure to incorporate and partner with those parents in order to get them, those scholars into school, because we realized that ninth grade, and it goes into our next slide later on, is that that's where you see majority of our failures at. And so the first step is to remove those barriers, get them in school, and then their success will happen.
All right. Oh, and before we move off, I wanted to just touch base, talk about our young men, the suspension rate. Let's just, that is on the higher end. So talk to us about challenge, support needed, strategies that are in place.
Okay, so our young men are increasing, but more so, we are seeing it with our females now. So this data here, it may be a little screwed, but we are seeing a rise in our females. A lot of this, as we heard earlier, is coming from social media. They're bringing it from our communities, inside of our building, and they choose to have those behaviors that are egregious in our building. The fights that carry on. And so we're seeing those numbers increase, but we are able to wrap services around our scholars. So we have our At Promise Center. We also are utilizing our circles. So we are using our Tier 1. We're increasing our See Something, Say Something as well. So the kids aren't using the app, but they are comfortable with saying, Ms. Blair, can I talk to you? Or my clerk, can I talk to you? I have something I need to say. And that's how we're finding out what is going to take place on our campus. And then we're able to kind of diffuse it and deter the kids from the fighting. So we're using those restorative circles to bring us back to a place where we can have a conversation instead of disrupting the campus.
Great, thank you. And so before we leave this actually is not for Thero, but something I'm just a pattern, and this is a wondering that I have. So if we're seeing that it is our female scholars that are there's more challenge, but our suspension rate is higher with our males, I'm just wondering about, are we being disproportionately punitive to our male scholars? I don't know. It's just a wondering as I'm seeing patterns. So something to put out there for us to just be reflective about.
I also think, since you mentioned that and you did lift that up, if you look at it, some of this is still a carryover for some of the egregious acts that have happened on campus, and our numbers haven't declined just yet. Because as soon as we start declining, something else lifts and it's bigger, and we end up tagging back onto our data.
Okay. I just want to follow up really quickly. Thank you both for your work at Thero and keeping it moving academically and social emotionally. So I just want to speak to the students with disabilities piece. And so that is too pretty high. So can you speak to what you're seeing with students with disabilities, and what kind of support do you need or are you getting around discipline with our SWD population?
So I want to thank you, because last time we spoke, that was our big lift. And the departments have really helped us with providing that behavior specialist that we needed in the building. So thank you. We also have had the help of Ms. Stokes, our coordinator, to come in to support our brand new cell. That is decreasing our numbers, but many of our children entered the building and didn't have BIPs in place. And so when you don't have BIPs in place and scholars have not been tested since they've been in second or third grade, we're finding that their IEPs aren't accurate. And so we're trying to service someone from a second or third grade IEP or psych eval. So now we are able to implement those strategies within the classroom, support our teachers, provide them with the accommodations, and we're seeing our numbers decline. But we're having to put in the work first. The work must be there so that we can support the children academically in the classroom and also emotionally and physically with the behaviors.
Thank you.
So you talked about your Friday ILT, SAC, and care team meetings. Is this data a part of those conversations?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is. Would you like to know a little bit about our progress monitoring?
Yes, please.
All right, perfect. So within our progress monitoring, we make sure that we include everyone in it, because it's the whole in schools. I apologize. We make sure to include the entire school, because this is everyone's data. With that being said, we discuss this within our ILT meetings. Also, at the beginning of all of our meetings, we make sure that we allot time to discuss data, because data drives all of our actions within the building. So within that, we make sure that we have academic planning meetings in terms of to make sure that students are still making adequate academic progress. On top of that, when we make sure that we partner with our parents, because we realize that the more the merrier, so that we can have a deeper, how can you say that? To make sure that we all are on the same page. So we make sure that we have that going on. In addition to that particular one, we make sure that we have our APs do our progress monitoring, or in terms of looking at the failure reports. And we also have those conversations when we do our gradebook analysis with our teachers, just to make sure that everyone is on par and make sure that their work is rigorous, but also making sure that it's actual meaningful and it's not weaponized at all in order to, as a disciplinary tool versus scholars.
Okay, yeah, I'll ask the question. Good look, I've been very interested in the college and career readiness data. So just speak to cohort 2023, some of the work that's being done where we're seeing gaps and how we're addressing gaps.
All right. So the biggest thing, the shift that we had this year is that many of our programs, in terms of our AP offerings, have diminished, primarily because we are an IB school. And as a result of that, our actual course offerings shifted. So as a result, as you can see, we have improvement within that, but we also have some students in which who, it's just shifted a little bit. In addition to that, within our CTAE, you see some changes in there. We've had more students because we have another fine arts pathway in addition to what we've already had in there with law, as well as our cooking classes that we have. But the biggest thing, what we want to do is just have more offerings for those students, and as we shift it to IB, and that we do plan next year to have more APs, because we realize that there's a gap, although we have our high-end students who are IB, but we want to make sure we continue to develop those scholars on which that they can potentially get into the IB courses.
I just have a quick question. How many students are enrolled now in the IB, on the IB track?
53.
53. Okay, thank you.
CTAE for us, Dr. Payne and Dr. Freeman have been working with us because we did see our numbers that were declining in that area. So we're providing additional support for our teachers. They are coming from the workplace into the building with instruction. And so that has been difficult for them. We have been able to create those plans for them where we're actually assisting the teachers, going out, visiting other schools that are successful, and bringing those strategies back into our building. And we're seeing that those coaching cycles are now working for our teachers, and they're able to implement those lessons in our building successfully. So we're hoping to continue to grow our CTA programs and have more pathway completers.
And then again, just to reiterate, the PSAT data, being able to look at that to see what your potential reports are saying, to know which AP courses your kids would be most successful with. So we are going to look at those tomorrow at principal's meeting. So please, when you talk to your principal when you get back, have that conversation with him about what our PSAT data is saying so that we can use that to inform the AP courses that we offer next year.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So slide number 9. So let's talk about what processes you have in place to address the data in each of these courses for the end of course test, and how is Thorough using the common assessments to be able to help inform where kids are in these courses.
Okay. So I'm going to start with American Lit and our algebra. We have a program in our building that we name PAWS. It's Panthers Academic Awareness Work session that we have in our building, and so that is offered every 9 weeks. And so that allows the teachers, because we are monitoring their grade books and the standards that have been addressed within the classroom, to go back, check the children for academic awareness and comprehension of the standard in order for them to successfully help them remediate those standards successfully within the classroom. And so we have seen an increase when we talk about ILT and looking at the data, disaggregating that data. We've seen an increase of those standards and the retention of information from those standards. So our American Lit, we had 47% last year that did not do well, as we can see. However, we're seeing a growth in their data this year based on those common assessments. And we are also going back, implementing those additional strategies in time within the classroom for them to remediate. Algebra 1, we needed some support. We started off with teachers that we did not have hired in the building. And so we only have one algebra support class. And so that is what is also driving our numbers to be as high as they are, because we need that additional body or bodies in our building for algebra support as well as geometry support. We're not able to offer that this year as well. And with that, that would also help our SST 504 coordinator with those plans, because then we can additionally support those scholars.
So you need some more support with the intervention
We
support
do.
courses? Okay.
We do.
Because of the teacher, not having a teacher is the?
We don't have enough teachers
Enough
to
teachers,
support the scholars coming from the middle school. So those are our 9th grade courses, and then we don't have enough teachers to support them within our building. We tried hiring. We were unsuccessful this year.
Great, thank you so much.
All right, let's move into our needs.
Okay. All right, so our priority needs, we're seeing that our 11th graders need to practice on their writing skills as well as their speaking skills. So it is the ask that that we could possibly receive additional funding for writing programs within our building so they can have access to the reading and the writing programs. That has worked well. We've been working with Ms. Crooms and Ms. Weems, as well as Ms. Hill from IDD, coming in and supporting our teachers and our scholars within the classroom. But if we could delve a little deeper into the writing and reading skills, that would help, because we've lost a lot of their information. Sorry, the scholars lost information during COVID. And we're asking for an intervention specialist. I don't think we have the funding in our budget. But that would also help our behavior specialist / SST 504 specialists right now with those group of students showing those deficits in math and reading. The number has increased due to COVID over the years, as we know, but we're seeing that it is actually continuing down to our middle school based on the MAP data that we just received. So we want to continue supporting those scholars. And then the areas of interest came from our new principal, and these were the ask. He asked for increased AP course offerings, to increase daily attendance rate. So skipping has been the most egregious thing that has happened on Theros campus. Increased graduation rate of our unknown students, and then talent management and support for math and special education. We are needing a couple pairs in our MOID unit, autism unit, that will need additional support back there for sure. And then we have some kids that are coming in with IEPs that have one-on-one pairs.
All right, we got it. And I wanted to say before you leave, thank you to you both. Thank you to Ms. Greer. Thank you to Ms. Torres for holding it down in this transitional period. Very great job. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Okay, our next school, Midtown High School, and the principal, Dr. Bachman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Want me just to start with this? Okay, so our signature program is STEAM. We began that journey this year. We have a full-time coordinator, Ms. Tanner, and she actually was a fine arts teacher. She was a course teacher for a number of years, which has been really good for incorporating the arts. She's working really, really hard on that. So we are rolling that out. It's been established, the timeline. We're very clear about what needs to be accomplished this year and then starting into next year as far as professional learning. We are incorporating to a large degree the arts, the fine arts, the performing arts at Midtown to make sure that they're a part of that. We're looking at problem-based learning very heavily. We've bought materials, handbooks, we're doing group studies, book studies, and plan to really roll that out starting this summer. A lot of that work, a lot of PL this summer. And we have started a student group, very proud of the STEAM Teens, a group of about 15 kids who are really helping to lead that effort. So we're very excited about that. We have t-shirts for them, and that's been a really, really good thing. You know, at high school you have to involve the students or nothing happens at all. And along that, another team that we have implemented, I'll just throw in, is we now have a student mental health advisory board at Midtown. the mental health in Midtown, I know across the country and the world, is at a very distressing rate, but it is really at Midtown. We had, a student last Thursday that attempted suicide. She's in the hospital. Unfortunately, that is not an unusual occurrence. And so we're very excited about really going to rely on these 18 students to talk to us about what really is needed on the grassroots level. We have done a lot of training for our kids about mental health, so very happy about that. With our professional...
Can I jump in there? Can you tell us more? Actually, I'd actually like to, I think it's a good practice. How did you bring the board together? Just some of the structures. Tell us how you built the process for the Student Mental Health Board.
Okay. Sure. So with the process, we planned it November and December with the adults and my student care team, which I have about 15 people who are completely devoted to mental health, basically. So we talked about that. And then in January, we rolled that out to the students, asked for interest. We had a little, an application, but for me, it was really like, if you wanted to be on this, you are on it because you have a reason to be on it. So we did a screening, but really we let everybody on this first time because we just, that's like not very mentally healthy to exclude people. So a number of them are seniors, and at first, of course, I was like, we don't want seniors because that won't carry on, but they are the ones, the seniors, who went out in their 9th grade year with the pandemic and have had to really navigate and try to attach back to school. So they are going to have some very intensive training on this program, which is an awful name, called Assist Suicide. That's an awful name, but Decatur High has a really great training program that they have. We sent our counselors, and they are coming in to train the advisory board in March on a Saturday to really look at that. So very happy about that. It's something I've wanted to do for a couple of years, and now I have it. So very, very happy about that. So back to STEAM for a minute. We always need more professional development to support teachers' understanding of how to really put project-based learning into action. You know, it's kind of like differentiated instruction. People have this general idea of what they're supposed to do, but making it really happen. Additionally, teachers need to have interdisciplinary planning opportunities, so the more school-based PD days we can have would be really, really appreciated.
We are also offering more PBL, Dr. Bachman. So on the March PL Day, school teams, so a team would come to get some PBL training, and that will be ongoing throughout the course of the year. But we are also looking at training in that way. So you send a content team there to learn how to build PBL units out. So that's kind of how that support is shifting for PBL as well. So just FYI.
Okay. We do have we do have teams that would be very helpful. We're beginning to train. Metro Risa is doing some STEM certification. We're also spending a ton of money on sending people to conferences this year. San Antonio is having a big one with the arts, integrating the arts and STEAM. Hopefully next year we won't have to do so much out-of-state training.
All right, so we can look at our attendance and behavior data. So pattern and trend, we're seeing, when we look year over year, improvement in our students not chronically absent. Anything that you attribute that to specifically at Midtown?
To the,
So for your students not chronically absent, we're seeing a slight dip from fall to spring, but when you look at the same time last year, we're seeing that there's an improvement. There's less students that are chronically absent. What are you attributing the improvement to?
We do have an attendance team that's very, very active, meets every week. We are not reluctant to pull students down to talk to our team. That happens every week. We also invite parents to be in that team. We're very, very specific about talking to students about the why. Why are you not coming to school? What is going on? Some of that is mental health. We're finding a lot of parents are saying their children are staying home for mental health. Haven't tried to tackle that. But students do want to come to school at Midtown. They're very active. They want to come to school, but our attendance team has been really important. Our disproportionality specialist that we have is really important with the attendance too, really having those one-on-one, very deep conversations. We have a therapist on site that is talking to students about that. But I have gotten some good ideas from the principals that are presented today about really drilling it down to the teachers more about the attendance. It's awful first period. We average 160 kids late to school every day. That's 10% of the population. It's awful because they're walking in. That's 160 times first period is interrupted by kids walking in. And, we make them write down why. We started doing that, and it's all from, my dad drives too slow, my mom was too slow in the shower, stop for gas, stop for Starbucks. It's that kind of thing. It's lazy in the morning is basically what it is. So that's our huge challenge at Midtown. We do incentives. The incentive money is very much appreciated from the district for incentives for attendance.
And then on our suspension rate, so for our black subgroup, right, when we look at the OSS suspension rate, a little bit higher than our other subgroups, any specific strategies, any notices, any wonderings, just that speaks to that disproportionality?
Community, like everybody has said, the stuff in the community since COVID that comes into school is much, much worse. Girls, absolutely. The girls, we even have our kids go and fight over at other schools. Which has been a real problem. They love to go to Jackson for some reason and do that. But so our special ed is a little bit better than it was, but we tend to have these situations where it's a group. There'll be 5 people, 6, 8 people fighting. That's part of the problem is group fighting. We are our disproportionality specialists. We have a couple of graduation coaches. We really are doing much more of trying to get ahead of that with, kind of community circles or restoration, that kind of thing. But it's just, it's just a number of factors. Even you can see our Hispanic students went up for suspension. We definitely since Christmas have had suspensions in school and out of school.
One follow-up to that. So, and if you don't know this offhand, it's okay. It's a curiosity for me. How are the suspension rates looking relative to the same time period? So, spring of 22. How, like year over year, are we seeing across the board? Are you seeing similar patterns? Are we seeing an increase, a dramatic increase? And I know we don't have the data in front of us. If we need to go back to it, we can. But just a curiosity.
This is similar, definitely similar, and. We'll try to be even more proactive because as the spring happens, it gets even worse, honestly. March, with all that testing and everything, trying to keep people focused and on that but it's about the same, but we have to be really careful and not let it get worse.
We talk about your monitoring strategies for failure rates and what credit recovery looks like at Midtown.
So we do meet every week with our teachers in PLCs and talk about failure rates, current failure rates, like many of the other principals do on a regular basis. What you can see here is our students still are absent, but they pass, and that's a real conundrum because you can't threaten kids anymore with saying if you don't come, you're not going to pass. Logically, you're not going to pass. You can see that high absent rate, still passing. And that's something that we're going to have to really tackle next year in a big way, which is you have to come. These absences, you can't just have all these unexcused absences and then turn in work. Because a lot of our kids are working from home. And I met with a student the other day about attendance, and she was absent, and she came back the next day, and I said, where were you? We wanted to talk to you. Well, I needed to catch up on my work, so I stayed home. That is absolutely the truth, and it's a really hard thing to get away from. So we do monitor this all the time. Our disproportionality specialists, our counselors, we talk about this all the time. We really pull in parents to conferences. We have twice monthly conferences after school where we pull parents in. What has helped with us this year is having Saturday school, a very, very firm, structured Saturday school with our teachers and it's very structured into how it's done, and that has really helped with our failure rates at Midtown.
Thank you, Betsy. Just have a question about subgroup populations. So of these course failures, as you're monitoring each week, what percentage of these students, where would they fall, your subgroup, African-American students, Hispanic, as far as course failures?
So our ninth graders have the highest failure rate, and black students have the highest failure rate. What has helped with our Hispanic population is we have a full-time community liaison, bilingual liaison, who really, really works with those families. And catching it early, like the 4.5-week mark or the 13.5-week mark, catching it early has really helped with that. She can talk to the parents. She talks to the students. The attendance really hits our black students a lot late to class, hurts them as well. So those are our populations. Special ed, a lot of wandering. That's part of our problem, is a lot of wandering, getting them into class. Shooing them into class is a problem. So they miss instruction that way. But black students and special ed have the highest failure rate. They're also the highest represented, though, in Saturday school, which has been a big help. And I have a slide in the appendix that will show, I think, our success with Saturday school.
Okay, thank you.
I am going to hire an attendance specialist next year to really, that is going to be his or her job, to really, really take on attendance. It has to be a full-time job for someone, I think, since COVID, especially at Midtown. It feels hit or miss. We send those letters home, we send them, but then we can't follow up. And so I'm happy about that. We're going to hire somebody full-time.
Betsy, one last question. So what work do you do with Howard for the 8th graders that are coming over to Midtown, those 9th grade students, especially students of color that are coming to, is there any strategies that you're putting in place as they transition to Midtown and take on even more challenging courses?
Okay. So what's going to help tremendously now is my assistant principal, who was very, very involved in curriculum and instruction at Midtown, is now the principal at Howard. And so we talk all the time about how we can start in 6th grade with exposing kids to higher level content, to really expose them, and especially parents that are not as, don't know how to advocate as much for their kids, to understand that if you start in 7th grade with a language, okay, if you start with the Latin, Spanish, French, with a language in 7th and you finish it in 8th, what does that mean when you get to high school? You can go to ACCA in 10th grade or 11th if you've done that because you've finished your foreign language. So it's really, it's the nuance of affluence, I would call it, because we have no problem with our white affluent parents knowing exactly how to work the system, as you all may know that. And so how do you educate and advocate for students whose parents don't have that knowledge? So Ms. Hollis and I have already talked about the pre-AP, really cementing the pre-AP work with middle school teachers. Also, we have to be really careful about just offering more high school level classes in middle school. That's not, because that tends to segregate even more in our cluster. That just means when they come to 9th grade, all the affluent kids are in this class. I mean, we have to be really careful about and intentional about how we do that. But it's more helping in 6th grade with kids who don't have that knowledge. That is the equity work, is knowledge. So we're working really closely with Howard. But I think you brought something up about really the attendance pieces, to really work closely with that, because in the high school, credits are everything. So to really talk about that.
Great, thank you so much.
And I think, oh, yep, great. You answered my question. I was going to say you answered my question. So,
Could you go back to that slide right there? So this is what I was talking about, how I'm very, very proud of this with the failure rates. So you can see last year in the blue, so with the regular classes, on-level classes, 9th grade, because that's where it starts in 9th grade, our failure rates dropped significantly from fall of 2021. Especially in algebra, very proud of that. We do the foundations and then the algebra. So this is really important because it's the kids that are not in the honors classes that are doing better. And that is, the Saturday school is tremendous. We have a math center open 3 days a week after school, really pushing the tutorials, really pushing that paper, the new tutorial service we're using this year, paper, where it's live instruction 24/7, really, really pushing that for parents and students to work on at home. That there's no excuse, 24/7, you have a live teacher helping you through that math problem or that biology problem, that kind of thing. So really, I started this year talking about equity in the GPA in 12th grade that gets you into the HOPE or the Zell Miller HOPE or gets you into programs starts in 9th grade. And we have to make very sure that every teacher is grading the same and that we are offering the same things because it's money. It comes down to money at the end, scholarship money and that kind of thing. And we can't take it lightly. Y'all talked about the importance of elective classes and the GPA. We really talk about that. You can't just blow off those classes. It's also strategic, though, to get kids off campus, not take all the classes that you don't need an 8-period schedule, which is the potential for failure if you only need to be there 6 periods a day. So that also helps enrollment. So
Betsy, I just want to comment on your Algebra 1, the decrease in the percentage of students that are not passing. I think it's wonderful. I just want to highlight the fact that you provide the intervention support course the first semester, and then you have the students take the class the second semester. And so that is absolutely excellent, and thank you. And you see that in some of the numbers. So I just wanted to highlight that piece. And then I also saw your colleagues looking, when you were talking about paper.com, which is that 24/7 tutorial piece. And I know I look back at Aaliyah, because that comes out of our media services department. Have we put it in the P3? So we put it in the P3 several times, but we need to send it back out to everybody so that it's front and center, because I know it can get lost in translation when you send a lot of information. So great job pushing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, we like that a lot.
Okay, we can move into needs with our time.
So support, we need to accomplish our goals, provide additional support in locating cohort students who are transient, unhomed, and are displaced in an effort to meet our graduation rate target of 90%. Midtown has the highest number of shelters. We have 6 shelters where the students come to Midtown, and then to some of the elementaries. Centennial gets hit hard with that, but many of those kids just disappear. They will disappear. We never hear from them again. We don't get a records request. A lot of our graduation rate is based on that. That's why it's so low, and why our black population is so much lower graduation rate than our Hispanic or white students. I mean, so anything that the district can do to help us with locating these kids. It's a full-time job, but it's very hard. Also, something that would really help us in our grad rate is if we could please have AVA open on a rolling basis, that we don't close AVA. We also probably have the highest number of hospital homebound kids. We have 20 regular ed and 5 special ed. That's a drain financially on the district, but if we could just switch those kids to AVA during the school year, these are kids that will succeed, but not having that flexibility is a real hindrance. If we could have it on a rolling admission right now, I mean, we just put 2 kids on homebound this week. If they could just be on AVA, if we could just put them on AVA right now, it would be much more successful. But chaining them to the 8-period classes when they're at home, and then they only have a teacher 3 hours a week that comes to their home, and if you can find a teacher. So we need much, much more flexibility with AVA. Not a criticism, we've got to have more flexibility.
So Betsy, you mean specifically the AVA Flex, not the AVA Direct, right? You mean AVA Flex or AVA Direct?
Oh, just AVA Flex, just put them in. Again, these are kids that are going to succeed.
Yeah, they'll be fine independent.
And it would just be really, really helpful.
Okay, thank you.
So we are at the halfway point, and so if we could take a 10-minute break, and we will be back, or about 8 minutes. Let's try to get back at 10:40. 10:40.
calls. I don't have to tell you all that. You understand that. Thank you. Our signature programming is STEM, STEAM, and I know I provided too much, but we're really proud of what we have accomplished so far. And the partnerships are coming in very rapidly. So we are Cognia certified, but we're really focused on, we got a lot of work to do, but we're really focused on being state STEM certified by 2026. So that's our focus. And some of the goals that we're proud about are the professional learning opportunities embedded in our day, not just in our PLCs. We have partnered with Georgia Tech and a few of their departments, Seismic, and we are working now to have a seismic STEM director in the building for next semester, next year. So that's going to help us tremendously because we do have, it's about half and half of our instructional staff that have over 15 years experience, so they're really, stuck in some old instructional strategies that are not working for our students right now. And then we have about 50% of our teachers that are 0 to 3 years of experience. So we really have to provide the training for them so that they can be effective in the classroom. So we're proud of the direction that we're going with that. And so what we have listed also is some of our partners that are providing the project-based learning that is so heavily and importantly needed in our STEM program. We want our students to be able to be critical thinkers. So we have student STEM ambassadors. We have, through the LEAD program, they have brought to us the Adidas Foot Locker Soul Project, where a group of our students get to create a shoe that Adidas will market at the end, possibly for sale. But that's the critical thinking part and the creative part that is heavily embedded in STEAM. We're proud of that. The Morehouse School of Medicine just donated $250,000 for our STEM Innovation Lab, and that's pretty big, and it's there. So the furniture was delivered recently. The MacBook Pros, the iPads, all for our program, our HOSA program, which when we're making sure that we're STEAM and STEM certified school-wide, so you'll be able to see aspects of it all around the school in all of our pathways and all of our programs. So we're happy about that. Our annual STEM show, Apple is visiting us this spring to look at that innovation lab, and the Morehouse School of Medicine has created that opportunity for Apple to come in and look at what we're doing. Apple. Did you got yeah, Apple. and we just confirmed that annual, and they gave me a name. I just forgot the name. It's a really important person. I don't know the name, but I'll find out and let you. I forgot the person's name. The annual STEM showcase happens tomorrow. All of our work will be on display from all of our pathways and programs. So if you have an opportunity to stop by tomorrow, the students and staff are very excited about that. The 17th. The biomedical debate team, which is based out of HOSA, one of only 14 teams in Georgia, was selected to compete on the state level. And then the Compost Connectors internship through our ag science piece. Our students have opportunities to have jobs this summer through that program. Blacks in Aviation Recruitment Program, officials from Hartsfield International and Delta are working with a group of our students to talk to them more about the behind-the-scenes jobs that are in aviation. It's a lot of them, and they've been coming on a bi-weekly basis to talk to our students. We're very proud about that. As I heard Dr. Bachman say, we need to continue the training. That's one of our goals. We need to continue the training and creating those project-based lessons, and we're really at ground zero on that. We need a lot of support on that. And right now we have support from Raising Expectations and once again Seismic that are coming in during that training. But this is going to be a very busy spring for us and summer to develop our instructional teams so that we can engage our students at very high levels. I don't have to tell you that we're going to see an improvement in attendance, behavior, participation, rigor, when our students are really anchored in our STEM program. So right now, it's not school-wide. It's probably 50%. You see it in our early college programs. You see it in our HOSA programs. You see it in all of our CTAE programs. All of those programs, students are highly engaged. We want to make sure that we're able to capture every learner.
Good morning, Mr. Wade.
Good morning.
Do you
Florence.
currently have a STEM specialist?
We do. We have a STEM specialist who has been doing the heavy lift prior to my arrival, but right now I would like to think that we all are STEM specialists. So we're really helping her with that. And, you know, that's a culture switch, right? And so we're working that out. And Dr. Freeman has been working directly with me on helping to our STEM specialists to understand that we're all working for it to be a STEM-wide school, and that I really need to see it, hear it, smell it every single day in every class.
Can you speak to that last bullet on your GROW, the master scheduling piece, to promote better
Yes, the
STEM
PD on high school master scheduling to promote better STEM collaboration. So once again, that speaks to what I just said. We have been scheduling prior to my arrival just with really like separate schools. We want to really make sure that STEM is, we put a focus on STEM and the supports that we're having so that we can see them throughout the master schedule. So, for example, all of the early college kids have been scheduled one way. You can see STEM in their programming, but you can't see it in the other pathways. So we want it to be obvious in all of our master scheduling, and we're working on that right now. Okay.
All right, we can move into attendance and behavior. First, let's look at the attendance take rate. So any tweaks to the processes that have led to some of the improvements from fall to spring on ATR?
Yes, me. Yeah, that's just it. I mean, so I absolutely don't understand if we don't take attendance every day, every period. So that's what we saw, that instant jump. And so that was a jump in the fall also, because it was actually lower than that when I came on board. But just having those one-on-one conversations, and not just spraying the entire group with the message, just one-on-one. How can we help you? Make sure, let's talk about the flow of your classroom. Let's talk about classroom management, and let's make sure the take rate goes up. And so we had that boost because that message was not being delivered consistently, but we deliver it now consistently.
And with that consistent message, we see kind of some year over year. We've seen, obviously, still some challenges with our students not chronically absent, but
Yes.
certainly improvement. So I want to call that out. And then, what are you seeing? What's working, and how are you continuing to move in trend in the positive direction?
That fall 22 number that you see, that's a jump for the students not chronically absent. That was an improvement over last year. The only thing I can look at for the spring is that bullet was taken on the 30th of January. We're getting back from the break. So what we had put in place, we had to start over again after this long break to reprogram our families and our students to come to school. At my first ACES, remember I told you that it was a culture at Washington of not coming to school. Like, the top students didn't mind missing a day or two. The top students. So that culture had to be erased and restarted. And so we're creating a new culture by awareness to the parents, town hall meetings with our students, talking about the importance of it. So that's where you're going to see a jump. So I'm anticipating that to change also at the end of quarter 3. But of course, quarter 4 is going to probably decline a little bit because that's just the trends that we're seeing. But we're right on it. The attendance office is on having a full-time attendance person, making the phone calls home, talking to the students. The students are being held accountable. And we're really, the awareness piece is really, I think, what's getting us some movement through our town hall meetings.
Okay, Principal Wade, thank you for that. Can you talk about, I heard about the attendance clerk and phone calls. What is the work of your care team and your student attendance committee that's meeting weekly? Can you talk about that work?
Right, just looking at the individual student and really providing the wraparound services for our students. What we're learning in the care team by looking at the students individually is that every student has a different reason for their attendance issues. So we're able to, using all the members of the care team, the counselors, the social worker that are there, we're reaching out into the homes and helping them to, first of all, awareness again, and helping them whatever they may need to get to school on time and continue to come. But I can honestly say we have changed through the care team and through our daily practices. We have changed the culture of attendance at Booker T. Washington High School. And now we're able to narrow down to the subgroup that we really need to focus on a daily basis. And a lot of those students we learned through the care team were the students that were overage and undercredited, and they were just disengaged. And they didn't know what to do. They knew how to come to school, but now they're finding that they are a lot older than their credits, and they need to find a way to catch up. And so we've been using Dr. Muhammad and Phoenix Academy. We've been very helpful. They came to our school and did interviews, and a lot of families accepted it. That conversation was easier had with Phoenix and the families than my counselors and the families, because they took it, they thought we were trying to be punitive, but we're not. We're trying to help you. They thought we were trying to be punitive because most of our students that fall in that category have, high class cuts, challenge attendance rates, and so they thought we were after them, but we were really trying to help them. But that conversation from Phoenix went over smoothly, and it's helping us to improve that in that area.
Thank you.
I wanted to say something about suspension. Okay, if we can go back to that. You see a jump in our suspension rates, and we have drilled down on that too. We had an influx of transfers in after the holidays. We had an influx of students that had been sent to Hank Aaron that are back, but it seems as if a lot of them came back a little too early, and we really need some more attention with them. But we're giving them the attention, and we're not targeting them. I make it a point. Don't mention what they went through in the past. They're back, and we want to welcome them with open arms. And some of them get that message, but some do not. And after the holidays, we had a weird influx of girl fights, and that's why you see a jump in that rate. We had some of our high-profile students, cheerleaders, fighting in uniform, and so it was just different. And so we've addressed that, and we've had the conflict resolution meetings, restorative practices, to no avail. Some of them still fought anyway, and some of the parents got involved. So that's why you see that jump. But we're working to make sure that suspension is not the first option. With my behavior specialists and my assistant principals know that. So we are working on getting that number down, but making sure that the appropriate discipline is applied. Okay. Well, this is a very long conversation about this screen, and we scratch our heads about this one. But, what bothers me is this number. These students who have attendance, they come to school almost every day, but they're still failing multiple classes. So that goes into the lesson design, creative lesson planning to engage our students. And that's a real tough conversation with teachers that are still teacher-centered and not student-centered. And we run as principals, it's a fine line between having this conversation, because some will walk away from it saying the principal is telling me not to fail anyone. That's not the message. The message is engage our students by sitting down, being a professional, doing some research, working with your team in the PLCs, and engage our students. And you can do it now because we are moving towards being a whole school STEAM school. So now we can unpack standards and build these engaging project-based learning opportunities for our students, and we're going to watch that number change. But it's been some high failure rates for students that are coming to school on time. Now, it's very obvious that the students that don't come to school, it's going to be some challenges with passing the class. So that goes back to our work with attendance. Get them to school, work with the teachers to engage them, and we're going to watch that number drop. But I don't have to tell this group, that is consistency management. You have to stay on top of it. You can't take a week off. You can't take a week off because you will lose all of your momentum. So it's a heavy lift, to be quite honest with you right now, but I'm not going to stop, and my leadership team is not going to stop either.
So something I've been asking throughout the presentations, so the college and career readiness data. So let's look at cohort 2023, and just speak to some areas. We're seeing increases in certain places, kind of flatline others, and some significant work in participation in the CTAE pathway. Call that out. So just where we're seeing the work that you're doing to move the needle and address the gaps.
Once again, I'm calling on our counselors to make sure that our students are aware of the opportunities that we have at the school. We are the only one that can tell our story. A lot of our parents enroll, don't even pick a pathway, just get out, go to school. But we have a lot of great opportunities. So the awareness piece around our counselors, the counselors and the grade level administrator, they run those town hall meetings. That's why you see the jump from the fall to the spring, because now they know of those opportunities. And we've given the early college dual enrollment students opportunities to share with other students. And when the light bulb finally comes on that you can go to high school and college at the same time, you can have stackable certificates, the light bulb is really going on for most of them. So what we're trying to do is get that message out to more of them. I promise you a lot of the families don't know anything about it, but right now you're going to see a jump. I promise you we're going to see a jump because we're out now doing our recruitment. And so after the holidays, we started to go to our traditional feeders with this message. This is what we have to offer. We're projected to have 270 ninth graders next year, but we're probably going to have more because we've also gone away from our traditional feeders and we've gone to some non-traditional feeders. So it helped me to get into Centennial because the principal is a former student of mine. I taught her math at Douglas High School many moons ago. She's the principal, and now we have a relationship with them, and I'm trying to get more of them to come to us. Kendesi visited us the other day. They spent half the day with us walking through the school, walking through the programs, simply because our board member invited them over. She's helping me. So I reached out. This is the help I need. I need our enrollment to jump. And so now we are into the non-traditional feeders, and they get it. Kendesi wrote me back and said this is their top visit so far for the year. So I'm anticipating getting some of those students also and they're really, the programs that the college and career readiness programs is why they are so interested. And our, all of our CTA, the culinary arts is really strong in picking up a lot of steam. And some of our wholesale program is really attracting a lot of attention also. So we're going to seize that momentum and grow. We're proud of this number under the Progress Towards Graduation because I have challenged the ninth grade team, ninth grade counselor to keep our ninth graders on track for graduation. We all know that the 4x4 is a great model, but the teachers have to be trained. The students have to be at school because if they don't come to school in a 4x4 model, they're going to fall behind quickly. So I got a message about a couple of months ago from Dr. Woolfolk. Am I sticking with it from Forest Hill? And I said yes. So we said yes, but now I don't know. We have to look into the 4x8 because I've been talking to some of my colleagues about it. I'm not catering to their attendance issues, but I don't want to set them up for failure also. So we have to look at it now. And I've been around for many, many moons. I was on the first team when Mays and Washington and Douglas went to the 4x4 block. Dion remembers that. We really fought hard because we wanted more time with our students, and then we had a very strong instructional team back then. We have to revisit that. Okay, so I'm going to need help from curriculum and instruction and everyone when we start this study. Hopefully we can roll it out by 24, 25 if we change it. And I'm going to be calling on all of you for your help with that.
Thank you, Principal Wade. Just a follow-up question. How many AP courses are you offering at Washington now?
1, 2, 3. We have 7.
7, okay. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to,
Have you looked at your potential reports for PSAT?
I didn't hear you.
Have you looked at your potential reports for PSAT to think
haven't.
about what? Okay, we're going to start that tomorrow at principal's meeting. So that
Okay.
may inform additional offerings that may be beneficial for your students.
Okay. Now remember, I need to have the instructors too. So that's been a challenge right now so far.
all right, so let's take a look at your milestones in the course assessment. I know this is last year's data. So how are you and your team working proactively this year to support students in all of these different courses? And how are you using the common assessments that were developed to help teachers understand where students are in relation to the standards?
Well, you're looking at the slow progress there because Washington High School teachers were not used to common formative assessments. They were not used to working well in PLCs. They are now. My first 90 days on, I've been around now about 126 days, but the first 90 days I didn't want to come and provide the shock factor, right? I wanted to see what was going on. What was going on does not work for our students instructionally. So what we're doing now, with the help of the school, Office of School Improvement and Ms. Wilson, we have a training session tomorrow, which I asked for through my short-term goals, is that we have more training on how to use the data that our CFAs are giving us. Then I took it one step back. Let's create those a little better because I don't want teachers to think it's a heavy lift and something additional to do. It's something that we have to do. This is the work that you cannot dodge. And so now they're working on that so that we can offset, we can improve the academic achievement in all of these core content areas. But that's been a challenge. And I'm guilty, of giving them autonomy to create after meeting with me and instructional leadership team saying this was going to happen. It's just not happening. It's just not happening at the level that it needs to happen. Not the level that I want it to happen, the level that it needs to happen so our students can be successful. But we have a laser focus on it now with the Office of School Improvement. And through some changes, we're going to make sure that the right people are aligned with this work so that we can see the growth. But the short bump that you see is because of that, just a focus on the individual learner through those small groups that are created by the data that I didn't say they were not doing it. Some of them are doing these in isolation, and sometimes the instructional coaches are not even plugged into what's going on. But if we can scale up what the successful teachers are doing school-wide, we'll see a bump in those items. And that work is going to come in our PLCs and our professional development. We've started that work on our, just every day, but we really put a big focus on it at the instructional fair that we had in the fall. Part 2 of that fair comes next week on the 20th, where we're working on some of those issues that will help us. We have sessions on PBLs, we have sessions on data analysis protocol that we use, how to effectively use that. We have a session next week on building those CFAs in all those core content areas that will inform our decision making.
All right, thank you. So we'll jump right to your needs.
We've had some challenges this entire school year with our neighborhood wanting to be inside of our school. It's just facts. We are embedded in a community kind of different than all of the other high schools in the city, so we've had to block off all points of entry at dismissal so we can't get cars and get intruders. Look, the great thing about it is our dismissal is quick. On the buses and out, it's clear in 10, 12 minutes. They know that too. So now they're walking into the perimeter, standing across the street, trying to start trouble. So I'm really asking the Zone 1 officers, Commander Mormon with the Atlanta Police Department, as well as the Atlanta Public Schools Police, to put in, I know we're not the only ones in the city, I know they're spread pretty thin, but we want a really big emphasis on that to stop that because it's kind of scary. We have a great day at school, and these people that I do not know are standing across the street with masks on their face and showing weapons at some points, and it's just really scary. So we really need more help from safety and security along those lines. We also need to add a few more cameras because it's become a challenge to keep some of those outsiders out during the day. We have a big campus. If you're standing in front of Washington High School, you don't really realize how big it is. It's really big. And all the way in the back, they come in through the baseball field, the football field, cracks in the fence. So that's something that we're going to be asking that we fix, mending all of our fences and more cameras to help us model. So what we set up through Principal Garner at John Lewis, he told me that we should really have a desk when I first entered, a desk with nothing but monitors. So I created that. And I have a person just actively monitoring those monitors full time all day. So they're calling out on the radio when we see any movement, anything that looks strange, and we've been able to head things off with that model this year. And that not only did that stop the intruders that may have malicious intent, it stopped DoorDash too. We stopped, and Uber Eats, we stopped all of them. So that's definitely working. So that's the operations piece that we need. That's the biggest piece in operations. And the rest is around curriculum and instruction, the Office of Special Education. We have a subgroup of students in special ed that we're really at our wits' end with providing the services for them. We want to make sure that we're providing the correct services for them. We are an open book, very transparent, and we've been working well with the office, but we really need that extra help for individual students, not a blanket answer. John Doe needs this. John Doe is failing. How can we help him? This is not the location for him. And we don't suspend them. We just work with them to provide them those accommodations. But at some point, we have to really understand that it's not working well for John Doe, and we need the district's help and with the proper placement for those students. The rest is, the Office of Parental Engagement. We just need to continue to get our parents aware about what we're doing, what our intentions are, and please continue to challenge them with joining our team. And we all know that's a challenge across the board, but I would really appreciate a little more help with that. But other than that, that's good, and I love the help that we're getting from the Office of School Turnaround, and I don't have to ask for that to continue. I know it will. So anything else that they do is just a supplement to what the great things that they're already doing.
All right, great job. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, our next principal from Frederick Douglass High School, Dr. Taylor.
I'll take that doctorate. However, I'm just Mrs. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to stand before you. I am the happy principal of Douglass High School. I'll jump right into it. Our signature program, of course, is indeed STEAM. We are at the very beginning process of STEAM. Even though we have lots of STEAM materials, we got lots of things going on with STEAM, but in terms of actually seeing STEAM within our building, it is not evident anywhere on either campus. Remnants of it, pockets of it, but there are some good strengths that have developed since I think we've began our journey, starting with we are on track with implementing our first PBL for STEAM at our 9th grade academy at the end of this month, and then implementing the at the main campus by the end of May. So we're excited about that because it has been a back and forth journey as directions have changed. But also we do have a STEAM team, our STEAM team, which has been established and re-established at the beginning of this year. We do have a STEAM team that is slated to go out in the month of March to go and actually visit 2 STEAM certified, state certified schools, one in Gwinnett and also one in Cobb County. So we hope to get some traction or some direction in terms of what it looks like, what it feels like, which also highlights an opportunity for growth for us. Mission and vision, like some of us have indicated already, it's just not evident. Like when you walk in, you don't feel STEAM, you don't look at STEAM. What I will tell you is there are plenty of layers at Douglass High School, primarily at the main campus. There is not a day that goes by that there's not some resource, some computer, some Apple device, some Z-Space or something that comes out of nowhere. Where did this come from? So there is a lot of money that has been invested in initiative, the STEAM initiative prior, but it's not being implemented, it's not being maximized. So in terms of those resources, we have a lot of work to do, starting with inventorying what we have and then aligning it to the instruction that's actually taking place. Dr. Woolfolk?
Yes, can you speak more specifically about the Grow with Resources? Is it tangible? What is it?
It's tangible, but we're also talking about human resources that are being aligned to STEAM. We are definitely not getting our return on our investments as it relates to human resources, but also the tangible resources as well. Oh, staffing information. We currently have 5 vacancies, as the kids used to say back in the day, psych. We have 2 interrelated, but we have a recommendation on deck. We have 1 math teacher, but a recommendation on deck. We have 1 social studies teacher, but the recommendation is on deck. When we did the transferring from Nimble to back to Soft Surge, we had to ask individuals to reapply, but I do want to give a shout out here to our Human Resources Department for really honoring what our cluster asked for, which was to get ahead of the curve in terms of hiring. And so the Douglass cluster in its entirety had the first launch of their job fair, which really helped us with these vacancies. Mm-hmm. So I do want to shout out Tiffany Adams and that entire team and Kendall Amerson for truly supporting our cluster because we did have these lingering vacancies and it did prove to be extremely positive for us.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. Let's jump into whole child intervention.
All right, here we go. So our attendance take rate, we have seen some improvement.
Yes.
Like many, I love this thing about not going first because everybody has already said what I'm gonna say. But attendance take rate, it really did take us intentionally buzzing into classrooms, monitoring that process further, even though we do have an opportunity to grow. And in fact, that number is slightly higher now. I believe it's at definite 92 or 93 as of this morning. Our average daily attendance rate, we're suffering there, but as you can see, We are the lowest, and I'm not afraid to say it, it is our reality in terms of our chronic absenteeism. We're at 37.7. We continue to struggle with many of the scenarios that my colleagues have already provided, but transportation does indeed continue to hinder us. As I was sitting here this morning, I received 2 text messages from our scholars that said, hey, my bus didn't come, and I'm on the phone calling the assistant principals, please go and get them. I do understand that transportation is a concern across the board for the district, but it should not be a concern for the Douglas cluster, because last spring I stood before the board and advocated for a whole fleet of buses to support transportation because we were implementing a 9th grade academy. Those buses are on our campus. They do not serve our students.
Okay.
Okay. So I do want to highlight that is. We've also addressed it. Our attendance team does indeed meet weekly. They are very engaged in that. When we have to withdraw students for lack of attendance, we have reentry conferences that require parents or guardians to come back in. That team is inclusive of our social worker, our counselors, the administrator. They go every Wednesday, all day, and they happen right before our care team meetings. They are good in terms of identifying those students who have been withdrawn, but in terms of addressing the large percentage of students, because we're looking at numbers at 700 to 800 who are following in that chronically absenteeism percentage, it is concerning, and it's hard to have those many meetings. What we have done recently is split our care teams up, so we have a care team up on the main campus and a separate care team at the 9th grade campus. That happened just this last week. What I will say is recently we also, with the help of our work with UVA, identifying that attendance was a major concern at Douglas, we have conducted a series of empathy interviews to determine our students' sense of belonging. What those interviews have revealed is very much one, our students at the 9th grade academy are definitely feeling more of a sense of belonging. They are definitely feeling more connected with the staff. And as a result, those students have a higher average attendance rate, and the chronically absent rate is definitely higher or lower at the 9th grade academy. At the main campus, those students, for all the reasons that my colleagues have already identified, our kids are going to work. And they also understand I can still pass and not come to school. That is a concern. Recently also, we have learned directly from our students. We were engaged in a meeting with Reimagine, there you go, Reimagine America Schools. I brought 2 of our students to provide a student voice. And I think one of my students put it very clearly, and this also came out in the empathy interviews. She simply said, and she's a top scholar, some days I'm just angry. Come talk to me, know me, stop telling me what you think is going on. I'm just angry. And she's a top scholar, highly engaged, but it does put emphasis or draw emphasis to some things, for all the reasons that we've already discussed, our students need mental support. So I want to thank Betsy for bringing the Student Mental Health Advisory Team to light, because I think that's something we definitely need to engage in.
Great, thank you, Marcella. So I want to follow up on, you just said our students needing mental health support. So how are you leveraging telehealth at Douglas? Where are you with getting consent forms and having some of our students exposed to that? Because I know that the student advisory team has been speaking to Dr. Herring consistently about needing access to mental health, and so we have telehealth on campus. So can you speak to how that's supporting your work at Douglas?
Quite honestly, we've struggled in that area, even though we have pushed it out in our Astro Advocate, which is our weekly newsletter that goes out. We've made announcements about it. Our parents are just simply not accessing it. I have heard you mention in the previous ACES that we're doing something and we're running a campaign. It was brought up when our board members came to talk to our scholars last week. They just simply didn't know about it. And so we are looking at addressing telehealth a little bit deeper for our kids so that they do know that it's available. Also, we are looking at our fiscal budget for next year in terms of considering the option of bringing on a full-time mental health therapist because Chris 180 and Family Ties is definitely overloaded with some of the concerns that our kids are going through.
You're exactly right. Thank you so much, Priscilla, for bringing that up. We are about to start a ground campaign. We're finishing up the contract where the company will go door to door and be at Publix and Walmart and in the neighborhoods and have videos created so that we can explain to parents because they simply don't understand a lot of times what that telehealth means. And of course, with all of the HIPAA laws, they're not quite sure how you're going to use it. So we're going to help schools with reaching out to parents to be able to do that. And I think they can do it face to face. So if you see them out in the streets coming up once we get this contract done, you'll know that they're out here helping to get consents for your school. So thank you. And so just really quickly so we can go to our next slide, can you talk about the suspension data? I know that it's a little high. And so if you can speak to your strategies around your suspension support.
High in comparison to everyone else, but I believe in full reporting and honesty and transparency. So that 3.75 number is actually a 6% reduction from the previous year.
That's great.
And so in terms of our 9th grade campus, we are seeing a 4.6 reduction in out-of-school suspension. The biggest change for us is we had 180 incidences of fighting last year. We're only at 54. So you can imagine, that's a 70% decline. You can imagine the level of exhaustion our administrators, our officers, our hall monitors. We've actually been able to retain hall monitors. We still have a long way to go because of the community and the environmental things that are taking place that are definitely coming into the building. When it's a group fight, it's not just a group fight. There's meaning behind that. It's gang activity. You know, like I know, I watch the news and say, not today, right? But that is our reality. And so we have to respond to that because what we don't want to do, and I cannot afford to do, is to sacrifice the 76 to 80% of my population that is choosing to engage appropriately and fighting to have a normal high school experience for the small, powerful minority that chooses to do or engage inappropriately. So we do have to respond to it because safety and well-being is very important for our scholars, and I am fully committed to making sure that Douglas is a typical high school with typical high school experiences.
Absolutely. Thank you. Absolutely. All right. Love it. Thank you for
It looks so pretty. It's not real. So someone said, wow, your failure rates look great. That is true. We have seen a major reduction in our failure rates this year. A lot of that I want to acknowledge is the fact that for our scholars, and I do want to say this, for our scholars, the 4x4 model has been very supportive. Our kids need to see the same face every single day. Is it an A day? Is it a B day? What am I doing? Managing 8 courses versus managing 4, okay? We have gone through the typical transition of course, it's a faster pace. There are some instances where we're going to have to build in some skinnies. I get that for our ROTC to make sure that our pathways are able to grow and build. And that is a learning process. But my painting area, this is not a celebration for me. What this says here is that you don't have to come to school and you can pass. That's not good. And so where I would love to be up here and saying, yay, we're winning, that's not a win for me. It also speaks to we need to focus on, and it's been identified in every one of our learning walks, our support that we're receiving from Metro RESA and our state partners as a community, as a CSI high school, that we need to up the ante in terms of rigor, but I will address this also when we get to the priority slide. But I do want to highlight where I'm glad my kids are not failing. We have a lot of work to do with rigor, and we do need to address some areas where, for all the reasons that my colleague spoke before, where it's just okay to not come and show up the last month or the last 2 weeks, and here's my work, and I get to pass.
Expectations. Thank you. All right, so let's jump to our next data slide.
All right, so I do anticipate, our 9th grade 2026, it should be 100%, correct? What we're most proud of is the progress that we are making. I know I mentioned in our last ACES about adopting or developing a graduation monitoring process. We visited Columbia High School in DeKalb. We visited Mays High School to determine, okay, it's not enough to just look at APS graph and the cohort summary data. There's a deeper story to tell there. We all see our unknowns in the red, but what do those unknowns mean? Who's got their eye on the ball? So we started meeting monthly in October, November, and December, where we meet, where it's myself, the scheduling counselor, assistant principals, 2 of them, all of our counselors, our 2 graduation coaches, our social worker, our registrar, our credit recovery folks, and we begin to call these students by name. Each one of our counselors have a script they have to speak to, how many kids, who did they move, who did they identify. We have a spreadsheet that is fully accessible by all of the members of the team, our administrative team. So in terms of monitoring, truly monitoring, we have Maria Grosvenor come out who joined us in that process. DeJuan Freeman is looking at that to see how some of those data collection pieces can be implemented in APS graphs for others, but it has made the difference. It truly has. As of right now, if we were to graduate kids today, that 93% is not our graduation rate because there is a deeper story there. But if today was graduation day, I'll tell you what, we would not be a CSI school any longer. And we're proud about that, right? Because we are monitoring that closely. So we're extremely proud about that. In terms of college and career, I'll pause for a question, I'm sorry.
That's the question. So graduating them to do what? So when you look at the college and career readiness numbers, where is the focus or where's the strategy around ensuring that they're ready to do something when they graduate?
So I will say our concerns around AP are very much the same as others. We had to put a pin and a pause on some of those courses because of our teachers who are not prepared to deliver the high level of rigor. We're just not getting the pass rates for those. Another environment, we may be able to say that dual enrollment would be our moneymaker, but what we're finding is our students who are venturing out, which would be 11 this year, to do dual enrollment, they are faced with that real rigor and they're not able to handle it. There's a recent dashboard that was uploaded, which I love, that talks about the percentage of your senior class that you're actually sending and how many are actually graduating. It's daunting for Douglas right now. So in terms of dual enrollment, we do have an increase from the year prior, but our kids are struggling for the rigor pieces, but also transportation. How do I get there? Because that is a struggle and a reality for them. We are, a big shout out to ACCA. Our kids are eating it up. Yes. They're loving that experience, but it also highlights the point we're in the process of rebuilding our pathways. They're not meaningful for our kids. Hospitality and tourism means nothing to them, okay? DeJuan has worked very closely with us where we are looking at our pathways for 2 reasons. One, which ones closely align to STEAM as we are continuing to STEAM forward, okay? And revisiting which ones we actually need to be offering our students. But the second thing is, which ones do our students actually want? So right now, where we are not seeing a lot of pathway completers or have not in the past, this is also because of the high failure rates in the past. If all of our kids are in credit recovery at failure rates of 50 to 60% on average, we can't get them in pathway courses. It's about graduation and completing versus being a pathway completer. So all of these things are coming into play as we are redeveloping, redesigning our pathways right now. Our 9th graders this morning took a survey to determine what their needs are under the specific pathways that we have identified. So we're real excited about that. And we are indeed exploring cosmetology because there is a hair salon in my personal bathroom in my office. I've learned more about how to put my own lashes on from my students than I need to know, but they have a skill. I just want you to know, they do. But we are exploring that as well because our kids are into barbering. They're into, how do I do hair and this, that, and the other, and it's not offered for them. But that's their reality, and it will keep them off the street, and it will get them gainfully employed and also fully into entrepreneurship, or at least have the opportunity to do so.
So going back to your attendance data and the failure rate, that conversation you said about the level of rigor, the students that are able to pass and not attend, is all connected to the rigor of an advanced class, not being successful in dual enrollment. So going to what's happening in your PLCs to prepare teachers to increase the level of rigor that they're being exposed to. What does that look like, and how are you and your coaches supporting what happens in the PLCs, but then also how that translates to classroom instruction?
Awesome. Can you go back to slide 6? And so in slide 6, in terms of what we have done, we had to develop and build our instructional framework this year. Last year, we were blessed enough to experience an increase in content mastery of 2.5, which we were like, how'd that happen? Because that was not our focus. And so imagine a world where we're actually engaged in PLCs, data meetings, all of those things that are mentioned here. Our focus has been on bell-to-bell instruction, but also as a cluster, we have been focusing on engaging evidence-based practices, right? And then most importantly, and I've heard this question over and over again, monitoring that. So when our instructional leaderships, and shout out to my entire instructional team and our instructional coaches, they are fully capable and skill embedded to do this work, but if we're out chasing kids in the hallway, we're not able to attend these PLCs. So as we are increasing rigor, which continuously comes out in all of our walkthrough feedback, that has been the focus. How do we increase that? Our professional development on Monday, the 20th, is focused on rigor and relevance, and also teaching our high school teachers some evidence-based practices that will increase engagement within the classrooms. And then, of course, as we push things out, we have a monitoring cycle, feedback forms that we are providing. We're placing teachers on coaching cycles to work one-to-one where we're seeing those deficits. And then we are also now, since our last visit to UVA, we found space to really engage in our instructional leadership, our ILT meetings, where our coaches are presenting to us. These are the teachers who I've supported. This is what we are seeing as the common trends. They're presenting that data. Shout out to Dr. Simon, helping us, finding that time. Also, they are presenting data to the team with our common formative assessments. This is what the formative assessments look like. They present the data to the entire team. It's all virtual because that's the only space we have with 2 campuses and the large team that we have. But it's working. Yes. It is that jolt of instruction that we all need so that we can start every Monday with that focus. Yes. And then, of course, we're using all of the monitoring forms that we are required to use and that we welcome from the state that keeps us on track. We had a huge push with learning targets and success criteria, which we are seeing a great response from. So those are the areas that are really helping us to monitor and increase rigor, and really, quite honestly, it's a great balance when we're not just doing discipline, yes, but we also have the opportunities to focus on what matters most, which is instruction.
Yes. That's great stuff, Forcella. Thank you. Just really quickly before we jump to Neat, we're going to look at slide number 9, and you kind of talked about this with your focus on increasing engagement and rigor in order for students to be exposed to the standards-driven work. So just really quickly, how are you looking at your milestones in the course data, on top of what you just shared, how are you using your common assessment data to help teachers with this as you're increasing rigor and engagement?
Absolutely. So we're really honed in, obviously, across the board, all of our content areas, but more so on our end of course courses that we're offering. And so what we're looking at is the common formative assessments. I've already talked about how the coaches are presenting that, but within PLC, something else that we have begun doing are teachbacks. We weren't doing that. So we're building things incremental, and we've added an additional PLC, which quite honestly, our teachers are like, why? Because they still don't understand it, but we needed a clear space for DDI. And so we implemented a DDI protocol this year, but actually getting our teachers to the point where they understand that they have to own that data and then report it out and then determine what those action items are. We had a lot of pushback first semester. We're starting to pick up steam, particularly in the area of ELA and our American Lit PLCs, but also in algebra and biology. Social studies we're still struggling with, partially because we've gone all year long without a social studies coach. But we think we have one or an opportunity to get one. We're still going to fill that vacancy if at all possible this school year because there's a lot of work that needs to be done in social studies. And also our EOCs, because we're 4x4, the EOC data from first semester looks very promising, even though because we're now on our second semester, it's like starting a school year over. We're also seeing the benefits of the 4x4 now that the teachers have picked up and understand the pace. When you know better, you do better. And so they've made those necessary tweaks to make certain that our EOC scores continue to are on the upward trajectory.
All right, great. And I think your Math 180 and your Read 180 data from intervention looks pretty good. So thank you for ensuring the focus around those support courses for those students as you focus on teachers with engagement, increasing rigor, getting those kids involved in those pieces is really, really great. So we'll jump to need really quickly and close out for Frederick Douglass.
Okay, much of this has already been talked about by my colleagues, so I'm glad to know, but that others are experiencing this. I really need for the district to review existing board policies surrounding student enrollment and the need for an appropriate education program for students who have dropped out prior to aging out and then decide, I want to come back to Douglass. This is also happening when we have students who are engaging in egregious behaviors. We assign them, go through the tribunal process, egregious, dangerous behaviors, and then we assign them to Hank Aaron. They don't go. They're gone for a year. Why is everybody amen? And if we all know it, they don't go, and then they get to come back to Douglass. I know they come to y'all too, but I'm just saying, I got the mic. And then we're stuck with a credit deficient student who is already disengaged, and now they've lost hope, and what do they come back and do? None of them have been successful. And this is not a knock to Principal Robinson because he and I talk frequently. He is experiencing the same concerns. And so I know that previously, towards the end of the year, there was a lot of discussion about the appropriate education program that needs to have its own school code, such that legally, when we're following the letter of the law for student enrollment, when we have these disengaged students who are opting out of the opportunity to be remediated at Hank Aaron, or they've been in our penal system, and they come back and they just can't hang, there is a place for them to have that opportunity. But also, it is impacting our graduation rate when I find a perfect placement for you, and then you decide, or your mama decides, nah, I don't want him at the house because he's deciding to do so. Well, I'm not a babysitting service, so I'm not here to watch your 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old here at Douglass when we have scholars who are definitely focused and deserve that opportunity. So I'm all about support and remediation, but we really need to look at our policy because we are leaning far too much on the side of becoming enablers at the sake of the 76 to 80% who want a normal high school experience.
Exactly.
Let the church say amen.
Amen.
Okay. All right, identify and address the existing conflict. We've already talked about that. Teachers' misunderstanding that we don't want to fail kids, but we also cannot continue to ignore that if you haven't been to school for 54 days, that you still get to have that grade because the board policy says you can't give a 0 for a missing assignment. We can easily remediate that by having a panel of discussion to talk about what that level should be or what leverage is there, but it needs to be consistent across all schools. And then the last one, we're seeing some improvements in attendance, but we're not perfect yet. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, our next school, Benjamin Mays High School, and Principal Dr. Wilkins.
I would have to go behind my sis, no worries. But before we get started, I do want to say that all of my colleagues have some great ideas. So I need to press upon, still consider myself a new principal, we need to have high school principal meetings. I have notes everywhere of some great ideas, and so it will be beneficial if we can implement some of these things in all schools. I know that's supposed to go somewhere in the back, but I want to make sure I put it in the front.
And we are adding that to our monthly principal meeting rotation, just FYI. So you'll see that start tomorrow.
Okay.
You did?
I did, but I won't be there.
I know, but.
Okay, we're going to work on it. No worries. All right, so again, I am Dr. Wilkins. I am the proud principal at Benjamin Mays High School. We are an IB school. This is our first year of implementation of classes. And for my glow, I am always amazed when I visit the IB classes and actually see the students involved. What I want to emphasize here is that the students will rise to the occasion. To hear the language in one of the classes, we most recently visited a PPS class, and the students had to create a timeline based on their birth to now and identify global events in the world and be able to articulate using the IB language. And to actually hear the students and to see them engage, I was fascinated. Not that I doubted, I just did not see that. So every time we visit an IB class, it's only supposed to be 10 to 15 minutes, but we catch ourselves staying much longer just because we're so fascinated to see the students perform at that level. So I'm excited about the potential of when it becomes school-wide, what that's going to look like. From a growth perspective, we have encountered some challenges. We're entering into NYP, and so we are preparing for our visit, and we need these unit plans. So that interferes with our PLCs because we don't have the time. So we're caught in between of trying to decide what's important. For a school who just came off the list, who wants to stay off the list, PLCs are important, but we want to continue to move forward with NYP. So we're just trying to struggle with those pieces. It's all 9th and 10th, and 9th grade has biology and and algebra. So now we're like, do they do EOC, PLC, or do they do NYP? And so just trying to find that time has become very challenging.
All right, great. Congratulations on coming off the list.
Praise the Lord.
So let's jump into whole child and intervention. So we see that you're about the same with your attendance take rate, just a slight dip. And then of course your ADA you have a little bit of an increase there. So talk about your students not chronically absent. So we saw a dip, and of course we always want that number to go up. So talk about some of the challenges that you're facing and what the work is at Mays around that. But again, recognizing that there's a slight increase from spring 2022 to now. So let's just talk a little bit about that with our students not chronically absent.
Okay, similar to my colleagues, we do monthly attendance celebrations, just trying to incentivize attendance. We have an attendance team and a care team in which they meet weekly. What we have found is when we deal with our most chronic students, they could move, but they're not moving out of that particular area of being very chronic. So they are moving, they're coming back, but they're not coming enough days. Like I have some students that could beat the system. I literally have one kid, Armani, who comes on the 10th day, right? So when they are familiar with the system, like, oh, well, you can't withdraw me because I haven't been out 10 consecutive days, that makes it somewhat unsettling because they understand the rules as well. So for the students that come to school, they're consistent. For the ones that do not, they have figured out how, in some cases, to manipulate the system. What I do want to share, I know you didn't ask, is about the attendance take rate in the ADA. For the last month, I'm not sure about my colleagues, we've had a huge hit among our teachers getting sick with COVID. Last week alone, I had 23 teachers out. And so, and that's kind of been our routine. The week before, 13 teachers. So, the numbers are just massive. So, although I know we think we're post, my school for the last month have experienced where I had a large number of teachers that are out due to sickness or having to file for FMLA.
All right, so let's speak to your out-of-school suspension rates, and we're looking at your male population and then, of course, your students with disabilities. Can you talk about your work there around suspensions?
Absolutely. I know in big picture 3.14 is high, but what I do want to point out is not the number of incidents, it's the type of incidents and the days that in which they're receiving. I'm happy to say we don't have a lot of small incidents where I have to suspend kids, but when they fight, my fights at my school are 5, 6, sometimes even 10 students, and each of those students, because it's considered to be gang or group, gets 10 days. And then in tribunal, which will contribute to that number there. But what I will note is that we were able to have a decrease with our SWD. I have 2 cells. And so before any student is suspended, we have to go through the cell to ensure that 1, where we are with days, 2, can we give something that's an alternative? Unless it's extremely egregious, we try to give it an alternative behavior, but that's for all students. But what I will say that this contribution, more than likely than not, is due to just large fights.
And I want to recognize that decrease with your students with disabilities. So love that you're working with your CELT to put some things in place to support that population.
Thank you.
All right, on your next slide, just again, the monitoring piece. What does this look like for you all to monitor your failure rates? And then what does credit recovery look like for your school?
Absolutely. So the heartbeat to what we do monthly cohort data talks, and that has contributed. I think I've shared that with you before, where we monitor ABC's attendance, behavior, course failures, dropouts, or what have you. And to me, that has been part of that's a huge part to our success because we have these early interventions or what have you. So when each cohort complete their cohort data talks, any teachers that are above 20%, they have to have a one-on-one meeting with that assistant principal. If they hit 50%, I have to be part of that meeting. And I have to provide me with a remediation plan on what interventions were in place, what phone calls are in place, because you have to follow the policy to make sure you follow phone calls or what have you. So that is a huge contribution. We also do monthly amnesty days. So every third Thursday and Friday, however it falls, we have amnesty day. That means everybody pause and a student get an opportunity to improve his or her grade. Even if they have a B, if the B is the lowest grade, you still give them an opportunity. But our teachers have utilized that time for students that did not come to school versus us waiting month to month. We try to give them an opportunity to remediate. We also offer night school. We're working on that. That is not the most successful, still a work in progress, but the during the day activities has really contributed to us being able to help with our failure rates.
I saw some head nods for that plan for how you address the teachers who have the 20% failure rate and 50% failure rate. So thank you for addressing that. On the next slide, will you speak to again, so your college and career readiness piece. Who is missing from these numbers? Which students are not prepared to graduate college and career ready? Who are the students and what's your plan for addressing that?
The kids that are missing are credit deficient students, right? So what we try to do is every student, by the time you're a sophomore, you have to claim a CTAE pathway by the time you're in the 10th grade. However, if you are a 9th grade student, for whatever reason that are off track, your focus becomes about getting that graduation credit. We have found that night school is not the most successful. It has helped us, but it's not the most successful. So often we're trying to roll students back into classes early. We're still in a cleanup phase because what we found initially when I was at Mays is that we were waiting to their senior year for them to recover 9th and 10th grade classes. And so it's still a work in progress, but the goal is to try to roll the student in as quickly as possible so they do not become discouraged. So that would be some of the students that are missing there. And then I think with dual enrollment, we put a lot of bank into hoping that our students will be able to do dual enrollment. We're working with the Atlanta Area Tech to come over to our school to offer the AccuPlacer. Our students can't pass the math part of the AccuPlacer. And so again, where we have put a lot of stock there because in the past we've done really well, the reason we did well is because they waived the AccuPlacer. When the AccuPlacer got back in place, and when you look at our feeder and our map, you'll see part of our deficiency is math. Our students aren't able to get past the math. Now, what I will say is that we are offering preparation courses for the kids because we still want them to try to dual enrollment, but again, it's a process.
All right, thank you, Melanta. Can we speak to AP? How many, I know that you're in IB school, how many AP courses are you offering for 9th, 10th grade at this point?
Okay, so this year we tried something different because, of course, I have individuals who's like, well, you have to have all of these AP classes. But when you look at our pass rate, it is very low to none. But we're trying to hit a reset. So this year for our 9th grade, we offered to, it did not matter where they, we lined the students up. We took the top 100 students coming from 8th grade, and we enrolled them in AP American Government. Now, I know that I heard you earlier talk about human geography, but I'll tell you why I went the other way versus the, went to AP American Government versus the other. The reason is because I already know that there's preparation needed for teachers, and I already them to the rigor. But even if they do not pass the American Government test, they can get the American Government for a graduation credit. Human geography doesn't count as a graduation credit. So it ends up being a class that they did not get the AP credit, nor do they end up getting the credit for graduation. So I needed to make sure that there was a win for my students. If they can't get the 3, what they can get is they have the credit for graduation.
That's great and very strategic, and I definitely appreciate that for students. So can you talk about what you've noticed in your PSAT data as far as what can you offer to students in addition to the, is it U.S. government? American government. Sorry.
American government. So just like everyone else, we saw potential in AP seminar. Honestly, I have talked to colleagues, we don't even know what that is. We just don't.
We'll help you figure it out.
Okay, no worries.
Because you have some leeway in the content of the course.
And I just need to know what it means. But the other thing I want to add is just like my colleagues is finding individuals to teach the class, right? So it's easy for me to persuade a new teacher who comes in. That's who's teaching my American Government. It was a brand new teacher. I said, hey, will you teach this AP class if I send you to training? Of course, they're like, sure, I'll do anything you ask to do. But because she's a new teacher, I have to give her grace to learn. She's learning how to become a teacher and trying to do it, be a teacher with rigorous material. Where I have seasoned teachers who are not willing to do the summer training or not willing to do just certain classes, if that makes any sense.
It does. Okay, thank you.
So how are you using the your common assessment data to drive how you're supporting kids with EOCs?
So I'm glad the district went to common assessment, but we were doing common assessments before the district. And so for us, I use something called a guaranteed viable curriculum. How can you ensure that all students get the same experience regardless of the teacher? And so often we use the data to have a data talk to identify, we actually have a rule where if it's between 60 and 70, this is the opportunity for enrichment. Anything less than 60, this is reteaching. And we have to actually talk through the process of the reteaching process through our PLCs. So in our PLCs meeting, it involves the content teacher, a CELT, an assistant principal, and I'm present at every data talk unless I'm at a principal's meeting. And there we just talk about, they have to bring the material, how did we teach it? Why is that important? Often when you ask teachers to reteach, what do? They do the same thing, but the volume goes up, right? And I always say the same thing, they're not deaf. they just didn't understand it. So just being intentional about the reteaching process, and then where we're gonna put the new material and how do we roll that process back in. So when we open up our meeting, we've already set goals. So our proficiency rate is really 5, but I put it at 10% for them because I'm trying to account for my CCRPI attendance rate that may not be there. So our rates are always set at 10%. So even when we look at common assessments, we're looking, did we hit our mark, and if not, what are we going to do? We also use student data trackers as well to make sure those students are hitting the marks so we can individualize that instruction if necessary, because these students have shown that they have the potential to be proficient. If they weren't proficient, how are we going to close that gap?
Great. I love the intentional work around the students. So how often are you observing, you and your team observing these particular classes to be able to focus in on the instructional strategies to reach these students?
Every day at 9:15. Everybody meet in my office, and we have a cycle of, we have to go identify classes. Every coach must be in their classes every single day, but we rotate as a team at 9:15 every day.
So can you speak to how you're using MAP at Mays to support your students?
Absolutely. We use MAP to kind of identify where our students will range. So we made some class changes this last semester based on our winter scores. So where we had our higher achievers, our bubble students, and what additional support was needed for our students needing the most growth. And we use the MAP to identify those students. So those students that are in red are more than likely in our math support classes. And though we know there that they need these additional support pieces. For the teachers that have the bubble kids, we've identified them. You guys know I use All in Learning. I think for the most part is my part as my data collection tools. And then All in Learning, we're able to mark those students and mark them. And then of course the students that according to MAP, which is not a large amount, we can identify them, and then we do the tracking with them as well.
All right, let's move into needs.
Okay. I'm going to go to the second, and I'm going to go to the first because I need to explain. It's my laptop. So I've shared with Dr. G, we have 753 missing laptops. They're either broken or what have you, and I just believe that we got to do something different. So I had to try to stop the bleeding. I made all the students bring the laptops back, because you imagine I would walk into a classroom with 25, only 7 to 15 kids will have a laptop. So how could a teacher create an innovative activity when only half of the students had the necessary resources? So what we did is collect all the laptops and try to create teacher cards, but of course I'm short, so we're sharing. And I know that there was this, my students did not understand the value of the laptops because I think of the distribution. We just gave them out, and we didn't attach a contract. And in my previous county, you had to have a contract before you got a laptop. And then there was a tracking system where we wanted it to go one-to-one. I have some students that had 3 or 4 laptops, right? And so now we're just here. And so now I'm worried about testing. And I'm just short. I am working with IT. I do want to say that, but someone needs to know that that's a lot of computers that's a lot of computers that are lost when it's 1,250 kids.
Yeah, we're going to prioritize. So I appreciate you raising and lifting it here as a high priority.
The third one is I would like for the district to consider purchasing the full functionality of Infinite Campus. Again, from a previous district, there's a couple of things in which you can do with Infinite Campus that we can't. The one thing that I know teachers complain about is when we move a student from one class to the next, all of those grades are lost. However, I do know that there's a function in which when it transfers, a student can go to another, their grade can go with them. The second piece is on scheduling. I did scheduling prior to becoming a principal. We could do student course requests through Infinite Campus. It just helped with tracking and allowed parents to be more involved. And so I just think if we just look at all the functionality of it, it may be more beneficial to school levels. And then the third thing I'm gonna bring up is just this flexibility. I just don't know what we can do with Edgenuity. I've talked to my colleagues, and all of us have a different perspective on Edgenuity. I'm asking for some autonomy to be placed at the school. I have had experience where they told me I can do this, but I just didn't know. You can build lessons, you can build units. For now, I have a Spanish teacher out until April on FMLA. In my previous school, I could use Edgenuity to help build what have you. They said we don't do that. I don't know everything that we can use. I just want, as a principal, to be able to have some flexibility on how I want to use it. I love Cassandra, wherever you are, I love you. And she's been working with me, but I have to call her to get permission to say, push this out, do this, do that. Whereas a principal, I know my needs of my school, and sometimes it just needs to be in the moment that I be able to do that. Okay? All right. Thank you, guys.
So do we have district staff customizing Edgenuity courses? Do we have that? District staff, like coordinators? Or something? Is that not yours? Okay, you do have that already? Yes. Okay, because that's. Yeah, I don't think we can do school.
And now our final ACES conversation of today and of the school year from Maynard Jackson High School, Dr. Dancer.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. All right, well, hello. I'm Adam. Good to see you. We are an IB school. We have been an IB school. You'll see I tried to tie our glows and grows to those areas of focus for this year. Every child who comes into Maynard Jackson High School, their 9th and 10th grade year, is an IB student. This particular glow is speaking to the diploma and career-related programs, which I'm proud. It's also a focus of our strategic plan. It's to continue to increase what our IB diploma and career programs look like in terms of our actual school demographics. And we've taken a lot of very specific steps. I'm very transparent with the data of who's in all of our AP and IB classes. It's all publicly accessible. It's maintained every year. And it's a big part of our commitment. This year, through very strategic work, which includes leveraging student leaders who are currently in our IB, DP, and CP programs, going to speak to our 9th and 10th graders. In particular, we see a need to speak and connect students. One particular of our feeding schools, King, when you look at our data, is definitely less represented in those particular programs. This year, we'll have jumped up from our current 2023 DPCP. It's a total of 45 students. Our 2024 year, though, is 81 students. And we're on track. We have what we think will be around 140 students for our 2025 in one of those two programs. That's a significant increase and intentionality. In terms of our grow, it's the planning is specifically for MYP is very, very challenging. And so we, in collaborating with King, I think I mentioned this in our fall ACES, well, maybe not, it might have come after. We had a PL day where we collaborated with King Middle School for the first time since the pandemic. We had previously, because we're partner schools, and that was great. But even within the own building, it's difficult. This is an ask, but I'm going to add it in here. I really think we as a district, if we're reimagining things, can consider things like building into our school calendars for the district some early release professional learning to allow for vertical teaming for our signature programs, especially because I've heard that as a common thing across the way. Questions?
No questions,
Okay.
but you're not the first person to say that.
Okay.
But kudos to the Globe for using your students to help to solicit other students to be in your DP and CB program. So good job for that. Congratulations.
Yes, and we have really well-attended IB, AP information nights, our Rising 9th grade night. We also live streamed them. They were very well-attended, both in person and online. We have a couple vacancies. We have an ESOL, which is a shared position. I think we're recommending somebody, or I'm supposed to, sorry, maybe after this meeting. And then we have an interrelated science position, which at this point, I'm going to be honest, we have found a long-term sub, which we're going to continue with, and we're going to try to hire somebody for the next school year because we have been unable to find somebody. Oh, boy.
Okay.
Let's focus on attendance. Don't get me to behavior.
All right.
Oh,
let's
it's one of
start with
those weeks.
attendance then.
I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
So, I mean, so speak to, so I mean, I've been looking at all day the students not chronically absent, some of the improvement there, any shifts, changes, speak to the work of the care team, anywhere we want to go with that specific data there.
Sure. I mean, I think from like our CCRPI metric, we're trending higher. Hopefully, we're going to be. We do, our care team and attendance committee have certainly been better this year than last year. I attribute that to specifically when I had an assistant principal vacancy at the start of this year, and I filled that in, and I was looking for somebody who could kind of take that role on, and so we've had a real good administrative focus there to then lead the work. And we have found a more consistent attendance clerk and specialist, and I think we're just kind of building that capacity within that team. So in terms of, and also things that they've said, monthly recognitions for attendance, and in terms of the chronic students, just a lot of attempts and home visits to families. It doesn't always change things, but we're trying, we're reaching out, we have documentation, and there's a variety of reasons for that, from transportation to, we've heard them all, and we're no different. It's the same thing. So sometimes, though, it's kids who don't live in our zone, and they don't have a bus to take. And I know that there's a couple of high schools who have some challenges with some capacity stuff. So, behavior. I do want to speak to that. I'm just kidding about that. That number is going to be higher. If you want to know why, there's a particular social media site. You can look up a unsanctioned page, and you can see. We've had and continue to have some really egregious behaviors by small groups of students, small percentage of our student body, but large events. And I'll be honest, I'm tired. I'm tired of it. I really feel we have a robust plan of people in place. It's not a lack of supervision. It's not a lack of student support team. It's not a lack of, like, we just continue to beat our heads against the same wall. We have a great restorative practices, and I hate that the number will go up. We're not going to meet that goal in our SIP. We're not. I don't think it's possible, like, mathematically, because our restorative practices coach has been one of the most important add-ons. I don't even want to think what would be the case if we didn't have that. It's just hard to measure that. But the work there is very difficult, and I welcome support from others. Like we have, just this last week, we sat down, had a mediation conference. Parents were involved. We put in certain agreements. We sat, 24 hours later, they come up to school, somebody looked at somebody the wrong way, boom, and 3 other people jump in. It's very frustrating because there is work happening. So, and we keep an eye on this. I keep an eye on this on almost a daily basis. And the special education, that is a number that we, it's not as high. As you can see, I don't know what it compares to last year. And this is, most of our suspensions are due to violent events and drugs, so. I do think it's important with that data, because sometimes when you utilize the code continuation of action, it kind of ties things like skipping to OSS. That is not the case. We also often put that because our biggest issue are students getting into issues when they're not where they're supposed to be, when they're supposed to be there. So we want to make sure that's documented accordingly in the system.
All right, so Adam, can you speak to your monitoring system for monitoring course failures, and what are you putting in place to support those students who are failing?
Sure. So this is progress data from a week ago. That's about 4 weeks into the semester, 4.5 weeks. This is very typical and very different than it will look like at the end of the year. However, the conversation really starting at about this point, because prior to that, you're talking about 1 or 2 grades, is within the department meetings and kind of individually with different teachers. We look at the failure rates, really diving into the teachers and go speak to them. This next week, one of the jobs that APs will do is to send a document to the teachers indicating where their current failure rate is and what plans they have in place to address that. And that is happening again, because we have some teachers who are really on top of it. It's really trying to fine tune it to those who, when you look then break it down at the grade book. So like if you have a 75% failure rate, let's go into the grade books and see what's going on. What are the assignments? And what are the categories? Do you have like one 40% thing that is really impacting it, and this child's done all these other assignments? So those are the types of things that we do.
All right, thank you.
Okay. You got it?
All right, so looking at this slide, I know you're trying to balance AP and IB.
Yes.
And I know you offer many classes for each. Just talk about your strategy for addressing those students who may not be showing up anywhere in your CCR data.
So we currently have 17 advanced placement classes. Next year we'll have 16. We're getting rid of macroeconomics. However, we're replacing it with IB economics, and it's going to be more of a a la carte class. So if you wanted to take it, to be honest with you, seniors do not want to take AP macro their second semester senior year, then they don't show up to the test. So IB, though, can be an incentive because it's another option for our IB students, as well as it's open to anybody. We do use AP potential reports, and we are even going to get the data, hopefully from King, from their PSAT. They just took 8th grade PSAT, so that we can really not ask. Just kids who performed well, we're going to put them into an AP class. It's going to be human geography, or it's going to be computer science, or if they have another option. It's the same thing we're going to do with other classes based on MAP reports. Because one of the things that I am a believer in exposure over necessarily the numbers. And I know the board goal, it's all about the performance, and we are at about averaged over the last 3 or 4 years about a 25 to 26% of students who got a qualifying score on an AP test. However, again, that doesn't calculate all the kids who get 2s. And the data shows that kids who get 2s are just as ready as the kids who get a 3. So I think that is important. And it's conversation. My mission to the counselors and to our AP IB coordinator is we have to get this information out before the kids get to high school. And that's something that Principal Gibbs and I are working through, because really that conversation, their readiness for an AP course, this board goal really needs to be to the middle school too, because if the kids aren't going to come to high school ready, that's why we're struggling with performance. And that's a critical piece. So how we can increase, and a lot of times it's just the teachers there don't know. So how do they prepare their kids on what's available?
So what about those kids who do not fall into that AP and IB?
And that's going to
category?
be some. I mean, there's not every child in every school, and so it's just trying to ensure. I think we're trying to. Our CTAA numbers are not great here. Part of that is because we have so many options. Part of that is the class of 2023 were freshmen when school ended March 2020. Their next year was a virtual year. A lot of them lost interest, or the pathways online, like over the computer, were not nearly as engaging. They came back, they're like, I don't really like this. And so we're trying to find that, that balance. Trying to engage a dual enrollment. A lot of times, if they're not AP or IB, the dual enrollment may not be an option for what I heard, like the qualifying scores on AccuPlacer. So it's just trying to find the course sequences and availabilities that are going to interest the child to maintain coming to school and all. So I think our numbers, 53% of the class of 2023 being in some type of AP. And then plus 20% in IB. I'm proud of that work, and we're going to continue that.
One more.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the number of options for CTAA pathways. How are you evaluating what's there to see what maybe needs to not be there?
I would say at this point, the problem was not what should not be there. we had a couple of one pathway in particular where there was a struggle with the instructor, and that hurt us. That's no longer. We found some, but I feel like we're going to be able to build that pathway back up. I think that we have a lot of interest in ACCA classes. However, as I just learned in a walk with Dr. Freeman, we have a lot of kids interested in some of those pathways over there, but they have limited spots. So like culinary arts, you know, there's a ton of kids interested, but we only get like 5 kids because there's only like 28 total. That's a barrier where I think we could get more kids interested. So I think, yeah, that's just something that I learned I did not know. So I think that it's just building up. We also have the pathways with the arts because we have the band, we have JROTC, rebuilding that program. I think that's going to help our pathway completers, although that won't be reflected in the CTAE numbers. Right, so, right.
Thank you, Adam. Just really quickly, can you speak to the pilot of the AP African American Studies, how that went at Jackson, and how many kids enrolled, and how did the teacher perceive that course this year?
Yes. So we have 2 classes of AP African American Studies. I have the numbers there somewhere. It's probably around 50 students or so total. It's been great. Fantastic. In fact, we have the AJC coming and sitting in the class Friday for an article on the African American Studies class. So we're excited about that. And it's, you know, I recommend the course for sure. Our instructor has been super invested. He just got back from Washington, D.C., where there was a conference about the course, and I had him last week. He did a lesson and for our faculty meeting. So because it's been in the news, I don't know if you heard. It's been in the news, and we wanted to make sure that our teachers not only knew what was happening in there, but he also spoke to kind of the curriculum and what's being taught in the course.
Perfect, great. And we know that this upcoming year will still be in a pilot, so we'll be talking to other high schools that might be interested in piloting that as an AP course. So just stay tuned. We might be coming to you all saying, please offer that to your kids.
There are kids in the class too that hadn't been in any other AP class ever, but this drew them in, and that's important. Now they don't get the test this year, but that's okay. They knew that going in, but that's an important thing.
I mean, will they test next year or still
think
pilot?
It's
No?
a pilot. They may take like a test that doesn't count.
Okay.
As they're building in, but.
So let's talk about your milestones in the course test results. So this is last year's data. So talk about your plans and how you use this data and what supports you put in place for students. And if you also can talk about how often you all are observing and giving feedback to the teachers in these courses.
Sure. Well, we're observing and giving feedback on a very regular basis. I think it's important, so between our coaches, our content, APs, myself, IB coordinators, CELTs, somebody should be in these classrooms regularly. Of course, we also need to be sure the other classrooms are going, because if they're not on point, that's when you get students who may not be as engaged, and then they can be around the building. But what we do is we're using the Common Assessment data. I would say I'm glad we have it. We're going to build upon, this is a good building block year. I think the take rate has been a consistent issue. I'm going to own that. However, and some of that is just, I think, building in a culture of common assessments again. When I look at some of the data coming out of it, it's not great. However, what they're doing is then looking at that data and then looking at the standards. More so the questions, but also the standards. What are the students missing on these assessments? And then how are we going to go back and reteach it? There's been a lot of intentionality around targeted support as well through our tutorial. Being our content cores are really coordinating to ensure that students, because oftentimes a student in math, well, also needs biology support, and we don't want them choosing. So being very cognizant of what days we're doing those supports, and really calling parents trying to leverage. We have bus transportation 3 days a week. We've taken away that barrier. We're incentivizing it as much as we can with things like food, because that's really the biggest incentive. So those are just things that we're doing. U.S. history, as I continue to say, that's a bit of we're going to build from here. CCRPI-wise, actually, we were just less than 2 points below what we were, because this does not take into account the 140 students who did not take the test but earned credit on CCRPI because of their AP and IB performance.
All right, let's move into need. We are running out of time.
Okay, so I thought of specific, specific things between now and May. I would love some content support, so people who are available to come out after school to support our teachers in biology, American Lit, algebra, and U.S. history, with perhaps providing a different voice to help teach some of the concepts in these tutorials. Likewise, I would love that support on March 28th. In March, there's 4 days that basically school's going to shut down for MAP assessments, 2 days, and then we have, in back-to-back weeks, SAT and ACT. A school of our size with the number of room accommodations we have to make. I'm asking for trained examiners from the district, so certified trained examiners who can come to the school to sit in the building doing the SAT and ACT, so that our teachers can then go to those 9th graders who are not testing and go smother them with milestone preparation and support. That's a big ask. Additional funds, if there's any more of those Publix cards or anything else out there, to buy food, to get students to the building, that would be great as well. Just some very specific things. And then one last thing I thought it was cut off, so I didn't add it. Kind of a little longer term. Next year we have new math standards. I would love there to be a focus, especially in, if not any, but in Algebra 1 at least. Maybe, and since we have so many IB schools, if there could be at least a unit, IB unit, built, an exemplar for that first unit of math, so that the teachers can come in and have something to build on, especially since so many of them may not even know, and it could be STEM, STEAM as well, but I'm being a little IB selfish here, but sorry, STEM and STEAM schools. So yeah, so it would be great, that would be great. So, all right, thank you.
One more round of applause for our principals. And so we do have a presentation that we want to actually recognize a principal. And so if Dr. Goodwine and Dr. Smith, if you could come up. And so we actually recognized schools who exited the APS identified list and the state list. And we felt like this was an opportunity to also celebrate with all of you and to give some hardware that she can display at her school. So we would like to have Dr. Wilkins from Mays High School, who exited the state list. And we would like to have a picture also. Could you get a picture? Got it? Oh, wait, hold on. Change the slide. Let me change the slide. Got it.
Matt, before you close out, I just want to let high school principals know your counselors. We have asked high school counselors and middle school counselors to meet on Monday
to start this, it's an hour for a conversation about advanced coursework across the feeder pattern. So an hour on Monday, there are two options. There's a morning option and afternoon option. So just FYI, we're going to have this conversation with you all tomorrow afternoon as middle school, with your feeder middle school, about what the progression looks like with advanced coursework from middle school to high school. So just FYI.
Okay. All right. Awesome. And then high school principals will be all together again tomorrow. Remember, principals meeting tomorrow. Wear your spirit wear in honor of College and Career Week, be it your college that you're representing or your school. Either is great. And what I'm excited about, something that we may be bringing back, or it's going to be new, is that we're going to have that affinity time. I recognize, and I think you all recognize, this opportunity to be together as a high school group to talk about similar challenges is great. And we're looking to be explicit about including that as part of our monthly principals meeting. So there will be time for you all to connect monthly to engage in these conversations and have those high school centric conversations. So excited and looking forward to that. See you all very soon there. So we have completed another round of ACEs. So everybody in the room and online, give yourselves a hand. It's challenging. These conversations are challenging, and to our principals, if you want to see the panel sweat, I've said this a few times throughout the last few weeks, tune in first Monday of the month at the board meeting, and you'll see myself, Ms. Brown, Dr. Florence, addressing these same type of questions with our board, because we are wanting to cascade. So the questions we are asking here are in response to ensuring that we're moving the needle on the board's goals. And so that is some of the work that we do. So I want to just share and echo the gratitude of the panel, the team behind us, for the work that you put in every day. And when you come here and share the good work you're doing, the challenges you face, and the strategies that we can put in place together to move the needle for every single one of our scholars. So thank you all, thank you all, thank you all. Before we close out and leave today, I'll ask if everybody, all of our principals, if you don't mind, please, just before you leave the room, to complete the survey. It does, the feedback that you give us, we will adjust. We will pivot and adjust the way that this looks and works so that we can make it most meaningful for everybody in the room. So please complete that. With that, have a wonderful day, and I will see many of you tomorrow morning at 8:30. Have a great afternoon. Thank you all.
Thomasville.